It's Tuesday, already the 27th day of December 2016, about to be 2017. I'm your host, Alex Jones. There is definitely a hot war going on with Russia, with the shoot down of their aircraft, and U.S. diplomats having suspicious things happen to them, and also Russian ministers having very suspicious things happen to them. That's all coming up today. There is just so much to cover. Obama obviously snuck through a bunch of tyrannical actions over the Christmas holiday. All this and more is straight ahead. But first, front and center, a very powerful report. Obama's immigration apocalypse.
Anis Amri, the jihadist that drove a truck into scores of people in Berlin, leaving 12 dead and injuring dozens, finally faced justice in Milan, Italy as a rookie police officer, took Amri down in a hail of bullets after Amri pulled a gun while being asked for identification. Amri had been one of the many refugees leaving Tunisia during the Arab Spring in 2011 for European shores. Tunisia, now seen as a jihadist hotbed, sending more fighters to Syria than any other country. Amri had been allowed to remain in Europe regardless of the fact that he had spent 4 years in prison after being held responsible for burning down a migrant reception center on the Italian island of Lampedusa. Back in Germany, Angela Merkel continued to ignore the blood on her hands as calls for her to step down echoed throughout Berlin's Washington Square, numbering as high as 10,000 protesters.
Because right now, we still don't know exactly what happened. We have to presume this is a terrorist attack.
3 suspected jihadists said to be linked to Anis Amri have been arrested in Tunisia, the home country of the supposed Berlin truck attacker. Described as members of a terrorist cell by Tunisia's Interior Ministry, the trio includes a nephew of Amri who was shot dead by Italian police in Milan on Friday.
It will be very hard to deal with this, to understand this, if we find out that this was committed by someone who took refuge in Germany.
And now the world enters the Christmas season on high alert as ISIS releases a list of U.S. churches to attack. Record highs surge across the U.S. border, numbering on the average of 1,574 per day, and 820,000 illegal immigrants with felonies and serious misdemeanors walk the streets of the United States, urged on by the reckless support of President Obama and the Mexican ambassador.
We are facing a crisis of epic proportions. More than 65 million people have been driven from their homes, which is more than any time since the Second World War. Among them are more than 21 million refugees who have fled their countries. Everything and everyone they've ever known, playing with a suitcase or the clothes on their back. There's a crisis of our shared security. Not because refugees are a threat. Refugees, most of whom are women and children, are often fleeing war and terrorism. They are victims. They're families who want to be safe and to work, be good citizens, and contribute to their country. If we were to turn refugees away simply because of their background or religion, or, for example, because they are Muslim, then we would be reinforcing terrorist propaganda that nations like my own are somehow opposed to Islam. It is an ugly lie that must be rejected in all of our countries by upholding the values of pluralism and diversity.
So I'm wondering how this might affect relationships.
It's not an attack on humanity. That's what it is. It's an attack on humanity. And it's got to be stopped.
If you take a trip along the San Diego-Mexico border, on the surface you won't notice anything different. But there is. It's the changing face of immigration.
Well, right now we're seeing a large influx of Syrian refugees seeking asylum.
Crime will surge, disease will spread, and more terror attacks are inevitable. Fortunately, Obama's days as president are coming to a close. The lifting of Obama's fog of apocalyptic immigration will be finally recognized for what it is. And anyone with any sense in their head will come to the conclusion that this is why we have immigration laws that need to be enforced.
We've reached the point now where the pendulum is swinging the other way. The globalist program of dehumanization and planetary regime is being capsized. And so there are now a lot of globalists and their minions who are opportunists running over, attempting to insert their little piggy snouts in and try to take over the movement. But we knew that was always going to happen. The point is globalism and private planetary government of the private central banks that control the private Federal Reserve, the private IMF, the private World Bank, they're all in deep crisis and being identified now. And once the public understands, oh, there's a ruling elite above this, and they're the ones that are trying to make us poor by design, and they write books admitting it all, well, once we get to that point, it's game over. Now, if you're a listener who's been listening 21 years, we've had listeners that have been tuned in that long, or a listener for 5 years, or even a year. You're like, Alex, you probably open 10% of your broadcast the way you just did. We know that. We understand that. We know about the Davos group. We know about Bilderberg. We know about the globalist system. We know about the TPP. We know they admit it's a world government. I know, but the general public still doesn't completely get it. So, see, I'm not here just trying to have an entertaining show. This isn't broadcast. This is information warfare using the truth. In fact, I forgot my stack of news from yesterday when I was up here working last night. It's on Zimmerman's desk. And there's a copy of the bill, subsections that Obama signed Friday night. Can somebody run that into me? Please, thank you. I forgot to bring that off his desk where I was working with him last night. The bill, if it's implemented, completely federalizes all communications in the United States and weaponizes 16 U.S. intelligence agencies against the American people. A lot of folks on InfoWars went, well, Alex, isn't the CIA already running the mainstream media? Yes, but this just officially puts it on paper and then gives billions of dollars of funding. One part of it's $160 million just for the State Department. The headline's Red Alert, Obama signs bill putting CIA in control of media. Now, that's one live video I did that was 45 minutes long. I did another one that was HD because after I shot that one live, I went, that's not actually as bad as it is. People always say I'm sensational. No, no, no. Reality's so sensational, 9 times out of 10, I underestimate. And I went, what is this? What are we facing, Zimmerman? And he said, this is total federalization of all media. And I go, that's it. Bingo. Now, we'll battle this. We'll fight this. And then in 5 years, when it doesn't completely happen, if we're blessed and we fight hard, people will say, oh, he said they'd federalize it. Now, they have taken over a lot of stuff, and they do go after people, and they do have a tax on people that they claim are disinformation, and they do have filters that block it, and the government does sue people now, but that's what they're announcing. And the Board of Governors of the FCC has taken over all communications. But, you know, still Alex Jones is allowed to operate. So it wasn't as bad as you said. That's how they roll. But let me teach you how I roll. Just so you can get a mind's eye, a bird's eye view, a window into how my brain works. Because I'm somebody more committed than probably anybody else to fighting this. 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I dream this stuff. I eat this stuff. I don't feel alive unless I'm resisting it because I understand how diabolical they are. People go watch movies where they're on a spaceship and there's a monster creeping around killing people. That's made up. I'm not scared when I go see a horror movie and then I'm walking around, you know, with the lights off in my huge sprawling complex, even though it looks like a spaceship with all the computer terminal lights. Little kids, though, come in here. My kids do, and it's dark, and they're like scared because they've seen a few movies or whatever. Those are fantasies. Those aren't real fears. The globalist tyrants, they're a clear and present danger, a menace that's killed hundreds of millions of people last century and this century alone combined, and who openly have declared war on humanity. So I'm constantly in war mode against them. And because I realize it's a war, and I direct operations against them like it's a war, it's having an effect because it is a war, and they call it a war against us. So I was sitting here this morning, and I'm always frustrated when I'm reading literally hundreds of news articles that I'm scanning over that I'm missing something. And I keep thinking, what are you missing? It's in legislation. It's been announced. What are you looking at that's triggered a memory here that's got you so upset because you're on the verge of a huge understanding? So I went back through like 60, 70 articles. Where was it? Where was it? Something triggered a memory. Something triggered something key, and then it hit me. So I'm going to reenact that right now before I get into all the huge news. Here's a headline. New York Times fumes after conservative media appropriated fake news, turned it against MSM. We've always been calling you the fake news. You've stolen our term. We're using it back on you. But now you've really popularized it because you have this system set up where you supposedly create the new definitions and we're supposed to accept it like from Moses on top Mount Sinai with the tablets that God carved with his fiery finger. So I'm looking at that headline, and then I go through another stack. The Washington Post blacklist story is shameful and disgusting. I'd ask for that to be reprinted. That's Rolling Stone. I saw an article about do people still read books? The answer is Democrats don't on average. And then I saw this headline from Infowars.com by Fiona Miller. And the headline was, sunlight supports immune system. And I thought, who said that? Who said that should be outlawed and you should be fined $10,000 if you publish it? Even though it's in thousands of studies. And old-timer doctors always said, get out, get some fresh air, go on a hike, get some sunshine. Get sunshine, feed a cold, eat garlic, eat chicken noodle soup, you know, things like that. And I went, Cass Sunstein, that's it. Cass Sunstein called for taxing alternative news, and Cass Sunstein talked for a global system to mimic China when he wrote articles as a professor at Harvard, but also at Chicago Business School. And then I went and started pulling up the actual papers this morning, and there it all was, the fake news plan of what these agencies are going to do. Because I knew a lot of what they were going to do by what they'd announced, but I went, there's a battle plan. There's a battle plan. Where was the battle plan? I knew it was the Communist Chinese with a model. I knew they were in our papers the last month lecturing us that this is the thing to do. And then it hit me. And that's how it works all the time. That's why I seem so frustrated, is my brain speeds up and is constantly accessing all this data and all this backup info, and then I'm kind of like, because I can't even get it all out to you. That's what's so frustrating. And it's just everything sends lightning chills through me. The AI systems getting placed in all of our homes. You think smart meters forced on you are bad. This total takeover, this battle to control the home and control your life, in the words of Microsoft 15 years ago. And now it's all happening. I'm going to get into that stack of news. But first, I'm sitting here deciding what to lead with. The fact that John Kerry is about to announce, according to our sources and other leaks, a full recognition of Palestine ahead of Trump getting into office to hand him a civil war in the Middle East. They weren't going to do this previously. This is being done as sabotage, part of the internal civil war going on inside our government. And I went, no, I'll get to that later. And I looked over here at all the smart meters that are really AI surveillance grids in their own words. And I said, no, that's not our top story. Now, I said our top story is what it was yesterday, why I came in and shot special reports. Obama enacts Ministry of Truth as public focuses on holidays. You got to read the bill to believe it. It says it's to counter information warfare, foreign and domestic. I studied what the globalists were doing to us 20 years ago and called it information warfare resistance. Well, they now recognize we're kicking their butt up and down the street because we're the real Americans. We have the moral high ground. We have the history. We have the facts. But I was sitting here looking at this, and I was looking at this article going, what is this article about sunlight supports immune system? What does this have to do with fake news? And then it hit me. Cass Sunstein. And I pulled up the articles, and there he was saying $10,000 fines if you say some sunlight is needed for health. You'll die without it. I mean, the studies are absolutely conclusive. You will die without sunlight early. And if you don't have vitamin D supplementation, you will die within just a year or so. It's an absolute fact. Now, that's nothing to do with the whole fake news story other than the fact That's an example of what they plan to ban once they get in full control. And how Sunstein wants to do it, and the inside thinking. This got rejected 8 years ago. This was 8 years ago. He was pushing all this right when he first got in. So like 7 years ago and 8, 9 months. And we've got it all. And then now it ties to all the new information. And no one else had made this point. And I'm not bragging. It's just, I'm telling you, I've got 10 times more of the data buried in my brain that I can't even pull up on this subject. So there's so much tyranny that I'm here already reading articles about a new department created, run by the, quote, intelligence agencies, the Pentagon and the State Department, to oversee the Board of Governors of the FCC to regulate the internet, print media, cable TV, not just broadcast TV or radio, and to organize and then police that information. And then I flipped to another article in the Science Stack about how moderate sunlight is essential to your immune system, to not being depressed, to being healthy, to having good hormone rates. It raises your testosterone and other key hormones you need. People wonder why they don't have good sperm counts, you name it. Your body thinks you're dying. It thinks you live in a cave. It thinks you're a prisoner. Everybody knows prisoners are unhealthy that are in supermaxes from no sunlight. And then I remember, oh my gosh, it's Cass Sunstein, the White House regulation czar, who comes up with legislation that Obama and the globalists want, one of the most important people in the administration. And he's a guy that wrote not one but 2 papers at Harvard and Chicago Business School calling for fining people 10,000 smackers if you, quote, put out fake news. And he said a government body headed up by the State Department, so we now know whose plan this is. It's Cass Sunstein. 8 years later, this thing got, shot down early in 2008. It was early 2008, 2009. So think about that. I mean, he got shot down even before Obama got into office. This was a big deal. But now they're back. And that shows what control freaks they are. So here's some of the articles. Obama information czar confronted over banned conspiracy theories paper. That's close quote. Claims to have no memory of saying free speech should be taxed, even though he wrote 2 different papers. And there's video of him being confronted by We Are Change founder Luke Radowski. We should do a special report on this for the Nightly News tonight, or get Luke on to talk about that. Here's another one. This is Salon of all groups criticizing it. Back when the left would still say stuff like that was wrong, remember? This is in 2009. Obama's confidant's spine-chilling proposal. Oh, yeah, I forgot. It's his best buddy. He's the head of the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. You can read his paper here from Harvard. And then it says, ban people saying the sun is good for you. That's some of the litmus test of what he says. And you go, man, that's crazy. Everybody knows you need some sun. That's the whole point. They want to set the parameters where they can ban anything they want whenever they want. Now, if you fast forward to 2016, again, I'm not trying to give Matt Taibbi credit because he does a lot of things that are wrong. He says things about me that aren't true, but at least he'll come out and report that the Federal Reserve's are private and that the globalists are rigging global stock markets and interest rates and currency rates. And he had an article. The Washington Post blacklist story, which was about me and Drudge, is shameful and disgusting. The Capitol's paper of record crashes legacy media on iceberg. Yeah, when you call for blacklist and for banning Drudge Report, InfoWars, and Breitbart, man, that is red alert, ladies and gentlemen. But, baby, they ain't just calling for it now. They've got such dumbed-down, pseudo-intellectual supporters of the Democratic Party that they think they can get away with actually shutting down the free press in this country. And it all comes out of Cass Sunstein. So everybody's got to look at this. Writers, researchers, go into his papers, go into his statements, and then just notice it all parallels what they're now doing. You want to know the plan? Here it is from the regulation czar that wrote up mock laws that they're now starting to adopt. In fact, Obama signed it on Friday night. Oh, I know I'm a conspiracy theorist. No, if I see a big hurricane coming in to, say, South Florida, I know you better move to high ground. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's called, if I got a fire going in my fireplace, I shouldn't stick my hand in it. Or if I see a fish under the water, bite on my line, and I've got the fish on the line, I know that I just caught a fish. Well, I knew Obama would probably sign the NDAA over Christmas because that's when they tend to do stuff. He never cut out the $1 trillion+ program, $1.5 billion a piece for that new crappy fighter. Listeners kept correcting me. I kept saying $1 billion. I got all these emails. No, it's $1.5 billion, Alex. You're like, oh, wow, you're right. Some say with cost overruns, $2 billion a piece. Well, I also told you over the weekend in tweets and in comments and in videos that if you think the Russian aircraft killing 92 that crashed over Sochi went down on its own, I got a bridge I want to sell you. Obama said that they would, quote, respond to Russia in their own time, their own way. They've given a ton of surface-to-air missiles of the Stinger variety to the, quote, rebels. There are more than 50,000 of these babies that have been sold just since the 1990s to third world countries. The Islamicists have a ton of them. You know, they shot down the Israeli plane, and they shot down the Egyptian plane, and they shot down the Russian plane over Egypt a few months ago, and now another one's been shot down, and the media tried to say that wasn't terror, and Russia tried to say it at first because they don't want to be drawn into a larger war, till the jihadis released the video. This was the beloved Christmas choir that's one of the most popular groups in Russia. Russia is really into classical music and Christmas music. Some of the most beautiful music obviously comes out of Russia and also Germany. That's where you've got the real histories of classical music, and was blown out of the sky in a direct provocation, just like the Russian ambassador was killed and 2 other Russian diplomats. Now we learn on the same day. Now the head banker, auditor general of NATO, found killed and not with his own firearm, dumped behind a building in Belgium. So there is definitely a hot war going on between intelligence agencies and killing, tit for tat, going on in the last 24 days with Obama in. And Obama admits, in fact, I meant to cover this Friday, but it came out after the show was over. You guys pull me the article, Obama putting a shadow government in. And that's why Trump's asking for names of all the new appointees and political appointees. He wants to do a purge. He's got to do it, of the weevils that have infiltrated everything. So Putin's now ordered an inquiry day of mourning after military jet disaster kills 92 in Black Sea. And, of course, they're having to open it up and say, okay, it could be terror, because no one's buying the fact that it isn't. But, again, the Russians are just waiting for Trump to get in. They know there's major provocations. Putin's come out and said this. Their foreign minister said this. Their intelligence chief has said this. The one that replaced their last head of all intelligence, the equivalent of our Clapper, saying it's clearly a false flag to make us break up our coalition with Turkey, Iran, and Syria, and make us get in a wider war with Turkey now that Turkey has sided with Russia in the last few months. And then Putin came out this weekend and also said that he'd previously been told by intelligence operatives on 3 different sides that it was a globalist operative in one of the aircraft in Turkey that shot down the Russian fighter bomber. He said he now believes that is the case. So how's the mainstream media feel? It used to false flags, staged events, self-inflicted wounds, inside jobs. In the past were things that only historians knew about, or people that worked in dirty tricks in black ops. You had to be an Army captain assigned to Special Forces group until recently to even be taught about false flags. And that's in the Army. I began to popularize all these terms in the mid-90s. They cannot stand the fact I do it. Like InfoWars. Who knew what InfoWars was in 1996? Almost no one. Now, Congress talks about it every day. And I'm here to put out the definition so people can know what they're being hit with. That's why they can't stand it. You have English teachers, you have Latin teachers, you have Spanish teachers, you have Mandarin Chinese teachers, you have German teachers, you have Portuguese teachers. You have folks that can teach you different Native American dialects. I'm here teaching people how the globalists operate, how they work, and what they do. Because in fictional movies, evil tyrants don't want you to have their battle plans. Like Star Wars, Rogue One. The whole thing's about trying to get the Death Star plans. And in reality, the New World Order doesn't want you to know their weapon systems' flaws or vulnerabilities. But in the real world case of what's unfolding, they act like you're an animal, and they write thousands of books and thousands of white papers and have thousands of meetings and tens of thousands of quotes admitting their entire stinking, anti-human, selfish, devilish, degenerate plan. And I'm here saying, here's their plan, here's how they operate, here's what they do. Now, the childlike public 20 years ago, on average, didn't want to listen to me because it sounded like, foreign language. But the military and the police were listening. And I never knew it would work like that. I thought the general public would care and get involved, and some did. You're the exceptional folks out there. Doesn't matter what color you are. You resonated, you cared, you got informed, you shared info, we all grew together. But you were a minority. But not in the military, not in the police, not in intelligence agencies. They would tune in and say, well, a lot of this is stuff I don't even get till higher levels of decompartmentalization. So people started tuning in to find out what was really going on, and then we started getting better information from people higher up, giving us a fuller and fuller battle space as we reverse engineered the New World Order program. And that's what InfoWars is. And that's why it's got the Russians listening. Folks, I knew Vladimir Putin listened on a routine basis and got boil-down reports on my show 10 years ago. That's not bragging. I would not talk about that 10 years ago because it sounded ridiculous. I knew that foreign leaders in England were getting briefings 10 years ago. 10 years ago, they've got metrics and algorithms and computers, not just the United States, that can see trends. And they knew, just like 6 years ago, the billionaire lady that I ran into at a law firm. And I looked up who she was later, and she was one of the richest women. I'm not going to get into it. She said, you're going to be the hottest thing in the world. And I said, why? She goes, because what you're saying is dead on. And it's all going to start coming true, and your credibility is going to skyrocket. Bye, I'm leaving to New Zealand and the Cook Islands. So is the revelation of what's going on from the enemy's own arrogant statements enough to get people to be concerned? This is not me saying they want to tax the internet and shut down free speech. Cass Sunstein, 10 years ago, wrote 2 white papers. He proposed it 8 years ago when Obama first got into office, and it was shot down by Rolling Stone and Salon. Back when liberals were still liberals to a certain extent and were not promoting pedophilia. That's what Salon does now. 8 years ago, they said, it's spine-chilling, it's horrible, we've got to stop it. What is going on with Obama? Now they talk about how hot 5-year-old girls are. Can't make this up. They're fully captured. That's why we're in such danger, people. Where is the old-fashioned liberal that was concerned about a police state or concerned about wars? They love wars now. And they've merged with the globalists and the neocons and the rhinos, and it's created just a delusional group of Fruit Loops hell-bent on war, and they're trying to start one with Russia, and I'm going to get to that coming up after I hit AI technology and other news. But first, ladies and gentlemen, I cut an ad this morning, and I'm so busy I can't recut it. That's going to be running throughout the week, where I list items that have sold out and where I point out that free shipping is going to be extended until New Year's Day, and then I've got to stop, and how we're going to keep the 50 to 30% off store-wide on everything. Since I cut that ad a couple hours ago, we have sold out of Silver Bullet that was 50% off and Super Blue fluoride-free toothpaste with colloidal silver and iodine added. Oh, that's an amazing product developed by a former dentist and oral surgeon and chemist, my dad. Made by the biggest manufacturer of toothpaste in the country. That is the organic type. Everybody knows their name. But we're not supposed to, as private labeling, say it, because we aren't supposed to for whatever reason. The point is that DNA Force is sold out. Secret 12 methylcobalamin is selling out. Biome Defense sold out. But that's the 50 billion living probiotics. We have the half strength that's half price. The 25 billion is just as good. It's just a smaller pill. We still have that. So that probiotic, the very best out there, it's not sold out. Survival Shield X2 selling out. Lung Cleanse selling out. Living Defense selling out. Child Calm sold out. But we've got Knockout hasn't sold out. Vitamin Mineral Fusion hasn't sold out. Liver Cleanse hasn't sold out. Anthroplex hasn't sold out. Super Male Vitality hasn't sold out. Prostagard hasn't sold out. Just take Prostagard. It is less than the leading saw palmetto thing you hear advertised all over radio and TV. It's the same dose as that for roughly half the price with, what is it, 9 or 10, I forget, other ingredients known to give you a healthier prostate and other glands as well. It's a Rolls Royce for almost half the price. It's a little more than half the price of the leading competitor. And the leading competitor is the same dose of saw palmetto and then a bunch of filler. No filler in ours, $24.95. Normally 30-something bucks, but it's discounted right now. You cannot beat Prostagard. Every man above 40 should be taking it. In fact, saw palmetto is one of the few things that even doctors in the Food and Drug Administration say, no, you can say saw palmetto is good for your prostate because it's so good. But this isn't just saw palmetto. It's a bunch of other ingredients that synergistically work together. It blows people away. You want health? You want a lot more than that, quite frankly. I'm going to stop right there. Get on Prostagard today. You can call toll-free 888-253-3139. But we're extending free shipping until the 1st. In fact, let's put it up there because it triggers, folks. The Christmas tree, a video shot that Zimmerman got of the Christmas tree down by the Capitol here in Austin, Texas. They're so mad about the word Christmas. They're so upset about it. They're so angry. They are running around foaming at the mouth saying, don't use that word. It shows what a cult of sniveling mental patients they are. So Christmas is extended to throw it in the mental patients' faces. Free shipping, store-wide, support the InfoWar, get high-quality products, help us go into the new year with the funding we need to battle the globalists. And so we also don't have a bunch of inventory, which we get charged a state tax on. For inventory in Texas, that is big. Yeah, Texas doesn't have an income tax, but it's got a bunch of other crap, franchise taxes and inventory taxes. Texas isn't perfect, folks. I want to make it better. I want Vermont open carry. Just, you're not a criminal, you got an open carry right. Anyways, I'm digressing. InfoWarsLife.com is the nutraceuticals. The supplements, InfoWarsStore.com is the umbrella site. Hillary for Prison 2017 with Soros on the back saying deport him. And Soros is a little goblin. We also have the Trump is my president, a few sizes left in that, in red. We also have a lot of other great products. InfoWarsStore.com, free shipping store-wide. All right, I'm done plugging. Take advantage of that through the new year, and we're doing that because it's been so popular. People like it. They appreciate it. And we have not sold out of everything, so we're going to keep it full tilt boogie until the end of the year. Okay. Let me do this so I can just take a break and then get focused when we come back. Because I'm very focused right now, but what happens is I get too focused. I have swimming in my brain right now hundreds of articles that I've looked at in the last day that I want to go into. It's all just over the top. I mean, right now I'm so stunned that they actually kept the strongest provisions in the anti-free speech bill and have created a Ministry of Truth where the, quote, Board of Governors of the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, is going to take over all communications in the U.S., including internet kill switches, you name it, and start controlling the filters, deciding what sites you can go to, what articles you can go to. And they're installing Snopes, a lady, her husband, and their cat, and a mail-order diploma company that has 6 employees in Florida. as well as PolitiFact with all its leftist leanings, over who will decide in this new federally funded board fines, lawsuits, fees, filters, regulations, blocks, everything Cass Sunstein called for. It's just so mind-blowing. But I'm going to get into that word for word in the next hour. We've got professors all over the United States saying it's time to murder all the white people. It's time to kill all the white people. We'll be better off when all the whites are dead. And then I see a new article on it every day with a new guy, and they're almost all white. And then I realize I don't want to even do, it doesn't do justice if I read one person saying this. What about all the professors that teach classes like The Problem with Whiteness and who openly say whites are a disease, they're inherently evil? I mean, this is the biggest load of crap, the most racist, insane garbage, and it's being implanted onto the minorities that are just people like everybody else who will be just as backward, just as knuckle-dragging, just as oppressive as any group of whites that's ever been oppressive. And then you know the whole world's history is a bunch of different groups oppressing each other, and color has nothing to do with it. If anything, the West has been more altruistic and more liberal and more empowering. I mean, it has just reached crazy town levels. And it's all being pushed in the name of fighting racism. And it's federally globalist funded to create absolute total divide and conquer. We've got breaking report. John Kerry's working on another UN resolution that would officially recognize a Palestinian state. People say, oh, that's reasonable. Let Palestinians have their own state. It's going to cause massive uprisings and an entire explosion. And then there's no room in the Gaza Strip or the Golan Heights. None of the surrounding countries like Saudi Arabia or Jordan or Syria actually want that. And they've been funding an invasion of Syria for 6 years, sending in Sunni settlers into Syria. But nobody cares about that, the 300,000 people they've murdered. We're promoting freedom and prosperity. Americana, the sexiest thing this planet ever produced. Not perfect, but a hell of a lot better than what other countries had. Because we expropriated all the good and tried to throw the bad to the side. Doesn't mean we were perfect. But they're now selling global poverty and global pain and global austerity. It's not hard to beat that if we've got a platform to challenge it. And the globalists thought the internet would be their system of control. It blew up in their face. I'm going to open the phones up in the next hour ahead of Matt Bracken, former Navy SEAL, best-selling author, to look at the next 24 days and how he believes they may try to destabilize things to stop Trump from getting into office or have him go into such a crisis that they can take control of his administration before he ever gets in. Clearly, they're killing Russian diplomats. Clearly, they're trying to start a war with Russia, shooting down this aircraft. I predicted hundreds of times you'd start seeing in the Black Sea, in the Mediterranean, aircraft being shot down by ISIS/Al-Qaeda, al-Nusra. And we've seen 3 Russian passenger liners in the last year blown up. And in 2 cases, the jihadis released the video of the missiles being fired. Putin does not want to promote this, but he is investigating it. They're trying to say it's not terror, they hope, because they don't want to have to be goaded into a response. They're hoping things change once Trump gets in. The problem is there's so many sleeper cells and globalist operatives in NATO and in our own military, and so many Arabists and others, that we're not out of the woods by a long shot. I'm going to tie this into Kerry. I'm going to tie this into Israel. I'm going to tie it into the cold facts, not which side we want to take here. Because I've got issues with things Israel's done. I've got issues with the Palestinians. Most of the Palestinians are just Sunni invaders. They're trying to take over lands. They couldn't take over Israel. So they're now trying to take over Syria. They're murdering Shiites and Christians and others en masse, and there's nobody crying for them. Our same media saying Israel's illegitimate. Our same media saying have UN resolutions against it. And Hollywood is the same media that cheerleaded hundreds of thousands of Syrian people being killed when Wahhabists invaded from all over the world, from Chechnya to Pakistan to Qatar to Saudi Arabia. And now it's up on Infowars.com. John Kerry is working on another UN resolution that would officially recognize a Palestinian state. And Michael Schneider of the Economic Collapse blog links to all the actual statements where they admit the resolution is being prepared. And the Times of Israel says that Netanyahu is also anticipating it. I know it's trendy to hate Israel. I know it's really cool with the right wing and left wing. I'm not an enemy of Israel, even though I've been attacked by the Israeli lobby that does go around bullying. That said, though, I'm not siding with the Islamicists that are running around having their kids suicide bomb. I'd go to hell before I do that. So just because a bunch of leftists in the whole Israel lobby lie about me and stuff doesn't mean I'm falling to their level or to the level even below that of the crazy frickin' Islamicists. So Princess Leia has made the jump into hyperspace. This shows you not everybody is going to make it out of 2016. Carrie Fisher dead in Los Angeles, and that is posted up on the Drudge Report right now. We'll also get that up on Infowars.com. Now, I've got a ton of news. That's right, Carrie Fisher dead at 60. Now, this just broke like 2 minutes ago. If you scroll down, I'll actually read the article. Thank you. Carrie Fisher died Tuesday morning, days after suffering a massive heart attack on board a flight from London to LAX. A family spokesperson had confirmed. TMZ broke the story. Fisher was on a flight from London to LAX Friday when she suffered the heart attack 15 minutes before landing. People on the plane tell TMZ she appeared lifeless. A passenger who at EMT performed CPR on Carrie, and once in the flight landed, paramedics rushed her to UCLA Medical Center, where she remained in intensive care until her death. Looks like she pretty much died on the plane. They just resuscitated her. The family had said she was in stable condition, but were told she was not responsive after her medical emergency. Carrie had been on a publicity tour for her new book, The Princess Dearest. The book recently made headlines before she wrote about having an affair with co-star Harrison Ford while shooting the original Star Wars movies. I'm not going to kick off a conspiracy theory here, but you hear about star killers and different stars that say as soon as you're not big, as soon as your name isn't big, as soon as you're not making them money, whether you're a rock and roll star, a country star, or a movie star, look out, because when a big movie comes out about you or a big book, if you die, though, it'll make it incredibly valuable when that second hurrah comes around. And sometimes, basically, the mafia that's out in Hollywood will kill you. And I've talked to some high-powered people in Hollywood, not just some of the people that have been public, who ran off to Canada and others, who said, indeed, this is something you've really got to worry about. So you want to stay big, you want to stay, basically in the spotlight and have value, because then only killing you gives you value because of a new burst of money that your managers or others are going to have. Now, she looked a little old for her age, and I know her and Mark Hamill reportedly like to party a little bit. So that's probably not what happened. But when you got Joan Rivers saying Michelle Obama's a tranny, everybody knows, and a couple of weeks later, she gets killed getting some plastic surgery, there's an issue. So that's all I'm saying is it should always be investigated when rich, powerful people in entertainment die, because it's well known that managers and people get folks drugged up to control them. I mean, you talk about a cult, you talk about a mafia, Hollywood is it. And let me tell you, there is incredible mafia in L.A., and people think, oh, you mean Italian mafia? Well, there's that. But there's also just other mafias. We always think of Italians being the only mafia that are out there. Do we ever get the Darth Vader clip?
I recognized your foul stench when I was brought on board.
Charming to the last. We need to get some actual clips here. Don't act so surprised, Your Highness. You aren't on any mercy missions this time. Several transmissions were beamed to this ship. I want to know what happened to the plans they sent you. I have to get in Darth Vader mode, and then I can actually do Darth Vader. And see, when James Earl Jones goes, I actually haven't tried for this, but I have done some commercials that are ripoffs of it and been paid handsomely, but I have to get in the mode. I have to actually practice with the, this is CNN. See, now I'm starting to get into it. Carrie Fisher makes a new appearance, literally, with the computer graphics, they're able to show her as she was in episode 4, A New Hope, that came out in the late 1970s. I guess 1977. And then the film ends where A New Hope begins. She was on a PR tour and died this morning in Los Angeles after coming back from London. And I was just talking to Anthony Gucciardi. He said, yeah, I saw Rogue One. It's a lot better than the newer ones, but man, the villains are so much cooler that you just make movies with them, especially the end scene with Darth Vader. That's the best ever. Why wasn't there more of that? And that's the big complaint about the movie, not enough Darth Vader. At least there's no Jar Jar Binks. And people ask, Alex, is very serious with the New World Order, very serious with war in the Middle East. Why are you talking about Star Wars? You got to have some gallows humor. You got to have some distractions. It's like talking about Kaepernick. You know, it's popular culture. It's how we reach out to new audiences. Plus, we all grew up watching Carrie Fisher, and she's dead. It's always interesting when famous people die because it reminds you of your own immortality. The fact that you are mortal, that you're not immortal. And that death's the great equalizer, and that death will touch us all. Both in the loved ones we lose, but also personally. It is the great unifier that binds us all together, just as birth and consciousness is. Birth, consciousness, life, the great continuum on into death, like rivers flowing to the sea. I want to hear from you specifically about the Israel situation. I want to hear from you specifically about the fact that it's reported that John Kerry is working on another UN resolution that would officially recognize a Palestinian state, and the hell that'll break loose if that happens, and why that's coming now. At the Chinese aircraft carrier prowling the Pacific, sending a message. We've got big news here with Obama coming out and signing the new legislation that's titled Countering Information Warfare Act, S2696, the NDAA 2017, and specifically says they're going to federalize all media. Of course, he signed that on Friday night. Everybody was basically asleep on the eve of the Christmas holiday. And it wasn't hard to predict that was going to happen. So we're going to be breaking all of that down and tying it into the latest calls for massive censorship that are taking place and how we counter that. But before I go any further, let me just give the number out, 800-2599-231. And by the way, there are people that bash me saying I hate Israel. They don't know what they're talking about. They're liars, or they believe mainstream media. There are people that also make an entire religion and sport and way of life out of hating me and making up stuff about the fact that I supposedly work for Israel. This is a fad created by MSM obsessing over Israel all day. I'm sick of hearing about Israel. Israel's a tiny part of the Middle East. It's not going anywhere. Israel has hundreds of nuclear weapons, high-tech delivery systems. And every right-winger that thinks they're, trendy, and every liberal that thinks they're trendy, obsesses over bashing Israel and worshiping Palestinians. Well, there are some people that had lands that were basically robbed of them during the colonization by the British, and then when Israel was set up in the 40s. And you can certainly have some beefs there. But most of the, quote, Palestinians are people that have immigrated or gotten into Israel and who claim that they're Palestinian in background, and they want to overthrow Israel, and they want all of the country, and they want to drive all the Jews into the ocean. That's not going to happen. So you have to understand something. This is a political football that's used to threaten war in the Middle East over and over again. Saudi Arabia doesn't take one Palestinian. Jordan doesn't take one Palestinian. Egypt doesn't take one Palestinian. And they oppress their own people all day long and then obsess and claim that every problem in the world is caused by Israel. The left, on the other hand, claims that everyone who's pro-gun or anti-Obamacare is anti-Semitic and hates Israel. So there's also the sickening left on that front. The very same left that is attacking InfoWars on a routine basis and pushing for gun control. So my biggest issue with Israel is a large part of the Israel lobby is anti-free speech and anti-gun in this country. And I've got a big problem with U.S. taxpayers paying for Israelis to have M16s, but then you're trying to block citizens here from having guns. So let's get something straight. I don't like the communist Chinese. I don't like the Israelis. I don't like the Brits. I don't like the Mexicans. I don't like the Canadians. Anybody involved in our domestic politics and trying to control what we're doing. And Israel is. But I don't put those provisos out with criticism of Israel to try to curry favor with the snot-nosed, pseudo-intellectual anti-Semites out there. I state it because that's what I do. I break down wide-spectrum analysis of what's really happening and try to look at each geopolitical player in their real historical role, not in some weird fantasy land. The issue here is, why is Obama launching this abstention vote now, basically saying with the other members of the UN Security Council, go ahead with sanctions against Israel, and the UN now coming out and will officially condemn the state of Israel's existence, putting Israel into complete war mode and encouraging Arab states around Israel to start a war. And why is Obama, who wouldn't do this for 8 years, handing this to America like a hand grenade the minute we try to disengage from foreign entanglements, kick out ISIS and al-Qaeda out of Syria, something Obama did as destabilization, and try to get our country moving forward economically and working with Russia to not spend trillions of dollars in a stupid new Cold War with them. It's a realignment with Russia, Japan, the UK, helping break up the EU and the globalist system and bringing real peace and prosperity. The globalists are moving on every front to open our borders, implode our currency, raise interest rates to drive down the Trump euphoria, and get a war started in the Middle East. And I've been saying every day since Trump got elected 5 weeks ago on November 8th, I've been saying every single day they're trying to start a war in the Middle East. They're going to launch provocations against Russia, shoot down their aircraft, killing of their top diplomats, and they're going to try to start a war with Israel using the Islamicists. Now, how do I know that? Because they admit that's their plan. They have a destabilization program. And so whereas I get tired of Israel's arrogance at some point, and I get tired of some of Israel meddling in our affairs, Israel's not trying to start a nuclear war with Russia right now. Israel is not involved in trying to dissolve our borders right now. If you're a Westerner and you try to go to a lot of these Muslim countries, you can't preach the gospel. You have no rights. Women are kept as animals. There's 1,300,000,000 Muslims. Our government's bringing them in as part of a destabilization program. So I'm asking listeners, we look at this. This is not a good idea. Even if you don't like Israel, some of you out there, what is the point of Obama, the New World Order, the globalist, the anti-gunner, the guy trying to sabotage our program to jumpstart the republic as he leaves with 24 days left engaging in this train wreck? There are a lot of people out there on InfoWars. I see you commenting on our YouTube channel. I see you commenting, and you're pushing for a war in the Middle East. You're pushing to get all the Arabs stirred up. You're pushing to hope to see a fall of Israel, which would cause the end of the world. See, I don't want a war with Russia, not because I work for Russia, never been there, but because I want my kids to have a future. I don't want Israel cornered into a nuclear war, not because I get orders from Netanyahu, but because I don't want a nuclear war. Same reason, comprende? The globalists have said, you accept world government or we're going to have a giant war. German chancellors have said it. British prime ministers have said it. French presidents have said it. U.S. presidents have said it. This is how we're held hostage by global governance. The very same Rothschild Rockefellers stirred up World War I to get the League of Nations. That failed. They had World War II to get the UN. The Rockefellers donated the land, set it all up, and they always say, you give us world government or we're going to give you war. The only peace is submitting to their world government, becoming poor, having one-child policies, letting them force inoculate you, and living under a medical tyranny, a soft kill. Their whole planetary program is in trouble. So where's the third world war supposed to start? The Middle East. What are they trying to start? Where's the next war supposed to start? With North Korea, what's happening there? What's happening with China? You got both hot spots being turned on right now. Takeover that's happening in most people's homes, and it's admittedly a takeover. It's admittedly a system to spy on everything you're doing and sell your data, and it transcends covering up your laptop video system with a piece of tape, as I told people to do 20 years ago, which now we see the FBI director and others saying, you know, it's time to cover up the computer video camera that's built into computer screens because hackers and governments are dialing into those. Well, the truth is it's been much worse than that for a long, long time. It ties into smart meters and a lot more. And I want to break down what's going to be happening in the new year. We predicted this more than 10 years ago. It's here. All right, now I'm going to go to these callers here. I don't care if people disagree with me. In fact, I'll go to the head of the line if you do. But I'm not going to go into a little victory lap about how I'm a Russian agent or I'm an Israeli agent. If you want to get to topics of why you don't like Israel or why you do, that's fine. I'm just not going to do the, you're a Vatican agent, you're a Russian agent, you're a Jewish agent. I've already heard it all. I'm an agent of the Republic, of prosperity, of justice. That's what I stand for. I built this myself with the listeners. I know people that live in their mother's basements can't believe that anybody could actually do something on their own, but I believe in you. So you have free speech. We don't screen your calls. But I'm not going to sit here and hear the mental illness. Okay, if you want to say something bad about Israel or good, that's fine. My point is, I'm an honorable person. I told you why I'm against overthrowing Israel. It's going to start a frickin' nuclear war. Same reason I don't want to have a war with Russia. This is the reality. Israel's not going anywhere. Why is Obama Machiavellingly doing this now? To create a giant crisis. They're shooting down Russian aircraft. They're killing Russian ambassadors. All hell's breaking loose. The head banker for NATO just got murdered. Today, executed in Belgium. This is the real world. Jeremy in Kansas, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yes, Alex. Thank you. If we want to turn Trump into an asset of the Republic rather than a tool of vulture billionaires, the military-industrial complex, and the Zionist power configuration, then you're going to have to start telling the truth about Zionist power in the United States of America.
Okay, you're on the air. Did you hear what I said? You can say whatever you want, but this BS about me, you're on the air. You're being listened to right now, big man.
Yeah, so the main group that's very dangerous around Trump is the Netanyahu faction. This goes down into Trump's deputy campaign manager, Michael Glassner, who is actually the deputy under Eisenberg, who transferred the real estate to Trump's good friend Larry Silverstein weeks before it was blown into smithereens on live television with thousands of living human beings on it. This man, Michael Glassner, also worked for the parent company of Genie Energy, which has massive energy interests in the Golan Heights, which is part of what this destabilization of Syria is about. On the board of Genie Energy in Israel, you also see the parent company having people like the Rothschild, Rupert Murdoch, it's of course bipartisan. Bill Richardson is on the board. Dick Cheney is on the board. Okay, these are the people that are surrounding Trump right now. Mike Flynn is not yet a patriot. He needs to speak the truth about September 11th treason that was done by Zionist power in the United States of America. And he wrote his book with Michael Ledeen, the arch neocon who's helping architect the clash of civilizations. You need to help us speak these truths. Have on people like Dr. Kevin Barrett, Christopher Bolin.
All right. I appreciate your call. I mean, there you go with who you're saying I should have on. I'm not going to get into that first person you mentioned. See, you just got on air, unscreened. You just said what you wanted to, and then it went back to, I need to have on, I'm covering up. And it's the same mental illness. Just, you do it each time, you know, and then it's you need to, even though they're on the air. I hear this statement that, well, you know, there's this Israel lobby all around Trump. Trump had the entire Democratic Party globalist operation against him. You want to get into the numbers. Something like 80% of Jews historically vote Democrat. And that's the most powerful bloc. And Trump got called anti-Semitic, which he never was. He's got a lot of Jewish friends and Jewish family. And he is a right-winger. And he does think Israel has a right to exist. That isn't a conspiracy. Then you bring up Larry Silverstein and the World Trade Centers that clearly had bombs in it. I've made films. I've covered that. The guy's in business in New York. You make some connection to some lawyer you say was on a lease or something. People do that to me. They went and found some corporation I set up and found out of tens of thousands of corporations set up at the top place that set them up. Didn't even know the lawyers there, just got recommended and went in. It's like, oh my gosh, the Brothmans got a liquor license in Texas set up here. They do that in all 50 states. No. His show is owned by the Brothmans. Well, if that's the case, where's my free Crown Royal? This is the conspiracy theorist, schizophrenic stuff that I talk about. When I talk about stuff, hey, you know, they probably shot down that Russian airplane with a missile. A week later, ISIS releases the video. Remember? Now Putin's saying it's a criminal investigation of this new one. I said it looks like a way to drive a wedge between Turkey and Russia, who are making a deal. The intelligence agencies are infiltrated by Wahhabists in Turkey. Now that's what Russia's saying. Because it wasn't a conspiracy theory. It was a historical analysis. But I don't want to digress. I'm going to take a few of your calls, so I've got to get to this other news. Like the producers were saying, hey, you wanted to lead the show with the mall riots nationwide and people getting shot and people getting run over and all the rest of it. So I'm going to get to that, too, coming up in the next segment. I want to hit this AI computer stuff. It's just, I hear all that stuff about Israel, and I hear all that stuff about 9/11. And clearly, a lot of different Western intelligence agencies were aware of it, and some of them were involved. And I do believe that elements of Israeli intelligence with the criminal, Arab, double agent operators in Saudi Arabia and our own intelligence agencies were clearly highly involved in 9/11. And that's come out in the 28 pages that intelligence agencies ordered to stand down bare minimum. Does that mean everybody in our Pentagon was involved? No, less than 1/10 of 1%. Does that mean everybody was involved in Israel? Less than 1/10 of 1%. Or England. When they move and do something like this on purpose, they get all the major intelligence agencies involved so everyone is compromised so no one can blow the whistle. And it was done with Saudi Arabian funding to blame Iraq, their archenemy, and begin the takedown of the Middle East you now see in phase 2 with Obama. Now, I had that before Wesley Clark ever came out and confirmed it all. This is an admitted program to turn radical Islam loose. 9/11 was done to go after radical Wahhabist Islam's enemies. People say, why were you against the Iraq war, but now you're such an enemy of Islam? I was against it because it was part of the destabilization program for the clash of civilizations that we're now seeing phase 2 of. And it's a real clash. So I stand with what's left of the West and Christendom. I tried to stop their big giant project in the Middle East of removing secular pro-Western leaders. Globalists don't want that now. That was an old Eisenhower program. That's not been the program since the 80s. I study Machiavellian systems, but you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know Israel's not going anywhere. Over 400 to 600 nukes, cruise missiles, long-range missiles, hypersonic missiles, just like all the neocons and the crazy left and that fruitcake Oberman. Russian scum. We need war with Russia. No, we don't. They've got 10,000 nuclear weapons. Well, what are you, a Russian agent? No. What are you, an Israeli agent? No. Get outside the box. Think like a Machiavelli. Doesn't mean you live like one or you use it. Think like a Machiavelli. And then ask yourself, what on earth are you talking about saying I'm a Russian agent or Rex Tillerson is because he wants to drill in Russia or Trump is? It's bull. We want a stable, prosperous world. I've studied the amount of oil that's supposedly in the Golan Heights. I've looked at that stuff off the coast there in the Mediterranean. It is negligible. There are a bunch of laws against drilling in the Mediterranean. It's not sweet crude or natural gas. Of course, there's a bunch of corporate people on boards. Dick Cheney's on hundreds of boards. So, yes, I know all about that. Trump's trying to not have a war in that region and trying to kick ISIS and al-Qaeda out and going against a current Israeli policy that's been to actually back a lot of these groups that are causing the civil war. Trump is bucking that entire program while at the same time being friendly to Israel. He's taking the moral high ground. And it's not right to call up and then extrapolate and connect him to 9/11 when he came out on the day of 9/11 and the day after on Fox and on CNN and said, I believe there had to be bombs in those buildings. It was brought down by explosives. A plane doesn't do that. And then described the architecture of Tower 1 and Tower 2. If he was an insider, he wouldn't have said that. The insiders fought him with everything they had. The emails all came out. Good elements of our own intelligence agencies leaked it. We know Trump's for real. Now, he's got a stratagem of high road to be nice to Israel, nice to America, nice to Russia, nice to everybody, till somebody screws him. That's called old-fashioned American power. What Eisenhower and others did is returning. Does everybody understand that? That's why I get a headache hearing a caller like that, because he made some good points on the surface. But what Trump's doing would mess up an Israeli deal to get that oil. Oh, sure, he's supporting settlements in some limited areas because Israel's growing. That's what Israel's doing, and Israel's under attack. And this two-state solution was always a fraud. Trump's just being honest about it. Israel's going to expand out to the edge of its borders. And if the Arabs are dumb enough to attack them again, they're going to expand past that. The whole world obsesses with Israel. Isn't it biblical? Instead of in our own backyards with what's happening here. You know, hundreds of thousands, more than 200,000 men, women, and children. Over 100,000 were military combatants, so total is 300,000. But 200,000 non-combatants, it's estimated, look it up, invaded Syria in the last 6 years to take over land, to colonize it. That's what Arabs do. They just take over. Saudi Arabia's invaded them 2 times in the last 100 years, taking over Syria and then getting kicked out. The Syrians all know because their grandparents fought this. Sunni, Shiite, you name it, are fighting against the radical Sunnis that are coming in to take over their land, take over their markets, their companies, their businesses, their factories. There had no word out of the Palestinians, a word out of MSM, a word out of Hollywood about how wrong it is to back this takeover. Israel took over a much smaller area in the 1940s, and that's all I ever hear about. How much bigger is Syria than Israel? Let's Google that number. I want to say it's like 25 times bigger. They come in, take over, mass murder, suicide bomb their own kids, suicide bomb families' dads, or they'll kill their kids, and not a word. Our media says they're great. They're the rebels. They have made-for-TV movies. How good they are. Oh, where's everyone's concern about the Islamic Jihad taking over and murdering people in mass, or how they're colonizing? Yeah, I'm not talking about population. Syria's 22 million. Israel's what, 8, 9 million? 8 million. No, I'm talking about geographically, how much bigger square miles of Israel versus square miles of Syria, and then divide it out. And we'll have the number. I'm just going from memory. The point is it's a lot bigger, but nobody cares. There's made-for-TV movies on HBO and Netflix about how great the jihadis are, and the left all praises when the jihadi kills the Russian ambassador, on and on and on. Look how big Israel is on the map. Tiny compared to Syria. And then you've got the Saudi Arabians through Iraq invading Syria, and you don't hear a word about it. I bet, just from looking at it, that Syria is 18 times bigger. So look at Saudi Arabia. That was all stolen the last 100 years by a group of criminals, child molesters, kidnappers. That's what the Saudi family did. They ran caravan robber groups that slaved women. Their ancestors were black slavers. They slaved blacks. So, of course, every domestic group worships them and joins Islam. Oh, you said blacks weren't human. Well, I better join your group immediately. Ha! Again, all fantasy land, all disinfo. The globalists are double-crossing the West, and that includes Israel. And is Israel perfect? No. Is the United States perfect? No. Is Europe perfect? No. The point is the globalists are double-crossing the whole deal with radical jihadis. Now, I've got to, you know what, I know Bracken's coming on. Let's push him to about 15 after, and I'll do the AI stuff at the start of the next hour because it's so important. I want to focus on that. I want to get into mall riots as well and what that signifies, the breakdown of civilization and culture and just total entitlement and total thug gangster culture being pushed by MSM. So Israel is 0.12 times as big as Syria. That's 0.12? Or is that 12 times smaller? We'll do the math. All right, let's go ahead and go back to your phone calls. I'm ranting. Oh, briefly. They were telling me during the break, but I didn't get all the info, and Anthony was going to go print it up for me. Super Male Vitality is our best-selling product other than Survival Shield X2. It is concentrated into an oil, key known herbs for thousands of years that naturally get your body to basically wake up, more energy, more libido, more stamina. Personally, I get a much better effect from Super Male Vitality than when a doctor gave me some and I tried Cialis. Not that I even needed it. It is incredible what Super Male Vitality has done for me. And I just want to encourage everybody to take advantage of it because it's selling out right now. We don't have more coming in until 3 weeks into 2017 because we're running free shipping store-wide, 30% off Super Female and Super Male Vitality, 2 different formulas. Super Male is going to sell out in the next few days. I want to thank you all for your support. But I would take advantage of it if you've never tried it before in your New Year's resolution. The energy, the libido. The first thing people notice within 2 days is the libido. We never even designed it for that or pitch it as that. But for people that are not exercising a lot or not getting outside or who just aren't charged up, you will notice it a lot more than folks that are operating at maximum or, peak performance. But still, those folks feel it. Super Male Vitality available at InfoWarsStore.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139. We've sold out a Silver Bullet Colloidal Silver. That was 50% off. Super Blue Fluoride-Free Toothpaste. That's sold out. DNA Force is sold out. Biome Defense with 50 billion probiotics is sold out. The half strength, that's half the cost, 25 billion per capsule strains. That is still available. It's the exact same thing. It's just half the cost because it's half the dose. Survival Shield X2 is selling out. Lung Cleanse is selling out. Living Defense is selling out. Calm Child is sold out. We got a lot of other products, obviously, there on the site. InfoWarsLife.com. Thank you all for your support. We're going to be getting more reporters, more camera people, more crew members in the new year because of your support. We're going to the maximum resistance level. InfoWarsLife.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139. And I see Anthony Gucciardi in there in the control room via the monitor. Not sure what his intel is, but you said you were going to have more info for me, Anthony.
Yeah, I just wanted to come in and let you know we just got the numbers here from the warehouse. And we are now selling out of Super Male Vitality at 30% off. What happens is, try to order as much as we can, but with the election specials and all of that. But at the same time, like you're saying, the taxes are insane. We're selling out of Super Male at 30% off. Brain Force is getting very, very low at 33% off. But it looks like we're going to have to hold back some Super Male soon for auto ship and everyone else. So if you want Super Male Vitality, which is, in my view, the best product that InfoWars Life has, 30% off. And also Secret 12 is getting very low. We've already sold out of Colloidal Silver, the toothpaste, DNA Force, Childies, Probiotic. So it's pretty much selling out very, very quickly.
I've never asked you your view on Israel. And we're good friends. Personally, I don't talk about it because I'm sick of hearing about it. There's a lot bigger world than just Israel. I mean, no offense to Israel, but this obsession, especially by Israel bashers. What do you make of this attempt to basically have Obama come out in a new resolution and say that Israel doesn't have a right to exist?
It's such an insanely complex issue, obviously. And I say the ridiculousness of it is over and over again that we have everything put into like an A or a B choice, right? Like a multiple choice, like it's either A or B, and nobody wants to look at the complexity of the issues. And then you have it kind of like a fighting system where everyone's like, so for some reason, oh, Israel's amazing, it's pro-Israel, everything's so awesome about Israel. And then you have the people that say Israel's the root of all evil and everything's terrible. I think that the ridiculousness of it is that it's such an intertwining thing that we need to look at historically and also study the areas, because it's funny, like the Vice documentary, though, about how horrible Israel is for ruining Palestine and stuff. They couldn't even go into some of the Palestinian areas because they would have things thrown at them and attacked. But at the same time, you know, Palestine sends a bottle rocket over there and they want to go ahead and blow them up. So pretty much all angles you can look at it in that way.
Sure, and both sides try to bully you into supporting them. All I'm saying is Israel's not sending their little daughters as suicide bombers. And then people say, oh, it's colonialism. Well, the Jews had a claim to Jerusalem going back 3,000 years. It's not like the U.S. coming and taking the Native Americans' land. Israel is not what you call classical colonialism. And by the way, as soon as we got here, the Native Americans were all trying to get us to attack their neighbors. They were always killing each other. And I'm not bashing Native Americans either. Humans all act the same. All I'm saying is saying Jews are inherently evil is bull. Or saying white people are inherently evil, or black people. It is the heart of racism, and now we've got all these white professors coming out saying, I want to celebrate white genocide. I want to, you know, whites to die this year. Look, you're an effing white male. Look in the mirror, twerp. And, of course, this twerp, again, is a leftist communist Jew who's a white guy who says Israel doesn't have a right to exist, and he wants white people dead. I mean, again, to say Israel's all a bunch of evil people who are right-wingers, look at how most Jews I know are like super left-wing middle cases. So, and I'm not trying to be mean here. It's just a fact. This is a more complex issue. When I say most Jews I know, I mean in the media. And we're going to skip this break so we have more time. You want to comment on that?
I totally agree with everything you're saying in terms of it's absolutely absurd because it also ties into the whole victimization of it, right? Like, oh, this is so horrible, so terrible. Let's not focus on the Islamic terror in any capacity. We need to just get rid of Israel, right? So it's all about...
And Israel's got between 400 and 600 nukes. They're not going anywhere.
Right. And it's this whole thing where we can't talk about Islamic terror or you're racist or you're bad. So let's reframe it somehow now to Israel needs to go away and they're horrible and they're the reason for everything. It's absolutely absurd. But you know what? You know who is the reason, though? Okay, no one talks about Obama funding the Free Syrian Army beheading Christians like you do, okay? No one talks about that. In Reuters 2008 leaks, Obama's giving them weapons systems.
Oh, no. I mean, it's cool in the liberal media to do that.
Creating ISIS.
Oh, it's so sexy, the wonderful rebels.
Yeah, but anything to defer away from that. And then Obama sits there like, yes, we have to help them. We have to get rid of Israel. It's a sad, sad thing. What? You funded the groups that started the whole Islamic terror movement in the areas by beheading people in the public square, gave them missile launchers.
Absolutely. We don't have 5 million Jewish refugees in Europe murdering people and attacking Christmas events. I mean, that's all I'm saying is stop covering up for the Islamic terror, liberals. Then I'll listen to you about Israel. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, and then they go and talk about settlements and about who can live in certain settlements. Settlements? You know, the thing we just discussed about him arming the Free Syrian Army. How about the support of what is now ISIS and then not even admitting that they are ISIS, not even talking about it? Yeah, because you're the progenitor of it. You created it by funding these groups.
And I'm going to calls. Here's my final point. You brought up some really central points, Anthony, that I hadn't got to, so I'm glad you popped in. Pop in anytime, please. I'm encouraging the whole crew to do that. We don't have a guest on. Let's just look at it mathematically, logically, okay? Let's just look at it cold-bloodedly. And I'm not saying then make your moral decision off that. I'm saying let's scientifically look at it. Israel has 400 to 600 nukes, global attack submarines with nukes, cruise missiles, ICBMs, medium-range tactical nukes. They've got everything. One of the most advanced militaries in the world, okay? They've got a superpower as their ally, and now that superpower is breaking away saying we're not your ally 24 days after a repudiating election against that government. That same government just passed a law to put the FCC under the control of 16 intelligence agencies, and they say by name they want to ban us. Where's the outcry for our free speech? That's what I'm saying. Again, where is Israel going to go, folks? It's not going anywhere. So why is Obama now, not 2 years from leaving when he could actually try to do something, why is he causing a global crisis and then handing it over to Trump? The same reason George Soros and the Ford Foundation spend tens of billions of dollars the last decade overthrowing the Middle East, overthrowing Ukraine, and trying to cause a civil war here because they're bringing in chaos so they can get control out of the chaos. This is treason. Trump needs to tell Obama, you don't make any more decisions or do anything else geopolitically, violating decades of U.S. policy until you're out of office, jackass, and then you can run around and try to cause a global crisis. This is insane. And everybody needs to repudiate what Obama's doing, because let me tell you something. It's about starting a war in the Middle East. The same climate was before World War I. I want to tell all the trendy something. When you're drafted, fighting tens of millions of screaming Islamists in some future mega war that the globalist engineer, remember when you're in a foxhole that you asked for it. Sorry, Anthony.
No, and then you wonder, why did he want a successor like Hillary Clinton, who's funded by Saudi Arabia, right? So...
Exactly, yes. And that is why I'm so sick of it. We got communist Chinese, we got Saudi Arabians lobbying to shut down the free press, and all I hear about all day is Israel, 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 Israel. Israel runs everything. Israel put me in charge. Israel wipes my butt in the morning. No, Israel doesn't. The leftist Israel lobby is all in my business, but I'm better than them. I want prosperity. I transcend them, and I transcend all the racist New World Order people as well. And the truth is, Israel, again, is a complex issue used as a destabilization device in the Middle East. It's way more complex than that. And again, if the public wants to know what's going on, understand this. Israel's not going anywhere without a giant worldwide nuclear war. So what are you dumbasses doing? Pushing for it and war with Russia. The globalists know they're losing. Their threat is give us world government or we'll start a nuclear war. That's always been their threat. It's how they set up world government. We're being held hostage by nuclear Armageddon, and I am pissed about it. I have 3 children. I don't think it's funny. What is my agenda? I wear it on my sleeve. Anything else, Anthony?
No, people should be pissed off. It's just like the BuzzFeed video or whatever it was about how horrible white people are. That's not racist. And then you can have Islamic terror happening over and over again, but then you're racist if you say anything about it. But let's attack Israel. Let's attack any other group. Just everything's bad besides the thing that's actually happening.
And it's big multinational corporations robbing everybody, setting up world government, turning the food off to the third world, and they just use Israel as a political football, like a voodoo doll that all the evil in the world's heaped on, while meanwhile the UN's running around colonizing countries all over for corporations, murdering entire villages on a daily basis.
They're political atheists. People don't understand. Do you really think billionaires and the mega corporate heads and stuff, they're sitting there like, well, my moral decision for this election cycle, Hillary Clinton.
Exactly, and they hate the U.S. because we have Christian morals and a free market idea and don't want to be ruled. They hate Israel for the same reason. They hate sovereign European countries the same reason. And they're using an ideology like Islam to try to destroy us, and that's why they've opened the borders up to it.
It's whatever is most beneficial for them in their micro agenda and in their macro agenda, whatever it is, they're going to push that. They don't care. They're not sitting here worrying about the rights that are being violated. It's whatever can move them forward. And
thank you, Anthony. I'm going to go to calls now. I apologize to the callers. Great points. Before I go any further.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go any further, Super Male Vitality, I've got it right here. Every batch is different. It's the same herbs concentrated over and over again into an oil. That's why it's so strong. InfoWarsLife.com. I've, again, been religiously taking it every day. I'd forgotten to do that because I've got so many great supplements. For the last 3 weeks, I've been taking it every day. Incredible. I've lost weight. I've got energy. I'm more aggressive. My libido is just on fire. Woo! In fact, I used to only take 1 drop, I'm taking more. This latest batch is really strong. It don't taste good, folks, because it's not. All right. I apologize to callers. Let's go to one before we go to break here. Johnny in Kansas. Go ahead, Johnny.
Hey, Alex. Appreciate the time, man.
Thank you, brother.
Before I hit my subject, let me offer you this. When we come forward with the depth and breadth of knowledge, you have these people that come forward either wanting to learn from you or tear you down. And I commend you for staying at this thing for as long as you have. What are you going on, like 25 years, 27 years?
It's like 25, yeah.
Yeah, you are doing an awesome job, Alex. Just stay at it. To hell with the naysayers. They'll be in your wake forever. It don't matter.
All right, I don't want to cut you off, Johnny. I want to hear the topic you called in on executive orders and Obama. And I apologize. We're going to push Bracken back to 20 after. He's nice to come on anyways. So I'm going to get to everybody. Johnny, I'm going to come back and give you like 4 or 5 minutes. Then Chris, Dustin, Chris, and Richard. Then I've got to hit the AI stuff. I've meant to do this for weeks. It's so important. Okay, I apologize to Johnny and the other callers. I pushed back our guest to go to him. I get so mad on just the Vatican stuff and the Israel stuff and the Russia stuff because, I mean, I've been called, when I was against the Iraq war, it was in newspapers, and they were saying Alex must be on the payroll of Saddam. Saddam didn't attack us. I was on the side of being informed. And look, I'm not bitching. Johnny doesn't need to call him and say, great job. Hey, listen, Johnny, thank you for caring. Thank you for being a listener. We're all in this together. I mean, look, I'm honored to be here. Please don't thank me. What I get mad about is some of the public that's so ignorant that we're really trying to go over the facts here that are incontrovertible in most cases, and they just are angry, thinking everybody's got to work for somebody. And I started thinking about it. Maybe because I started my own business and run my own operation, I understand a lot of folks don't work for somebody. In fact, my whole life's about not working for somebody. And I think that's why I get mad about it, is because it's not true. But go ahead and make your points about executive orders, sir.
Okay, Alex. Donald Trump already come out and said that he was going to vacate a bunch of the executive orders that Obama's done. So what he's done is he's passed the torch over to his compartment in his czar's nation that he established. And they're going to try to do it by way of just proclamation. We're going to do this now. Okay. So Trump has got to move forward and get this thing done. But here's the issue. Here's the main issue that everybody's missing, is our country is unique across this entire globe in the fact that the people are supposed to be in control. That's the essence of self-government. And the founders, when they were drawing up our articles, they decided that we were going to stay in this position where we're not led by anybody except for what we need to take care of ourselves. And we're going to be a defensive nation. We're not going to be aggressive anywhere.
And that's because they were studying William Tell in Switzerland that was only 100-something years old at that time. And if we'd have done that, wow, can you imagine?
Now, you think about this. The first two articles, they put so much importance on populating our representatives and paying them that those are the first two articles of our Bill of Rights, which should more correctly be called a Bill of Prohibitions, articles of prohibitions. You keep your hands off of this because this is the people talking. You do whatever you want in your
That's right. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. It means you don't have a jurisdiction. You can't touch it.
But here's the thing. We put out a call for the people to get off their butts and force our states to ratify the original first, which is the division of the congressional districts. And then we're going to eviscerate this criminal cabal that we've got.
I agree. If we go back to the full Constitution, it'll break up the gerrymandering. There's a lot of good stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But all we need is people. We've got to populate.
But see, you're so informed, Johnny. You sound like you're speaking space alien, not to our general audience, but to a new listener. I mean, have you seen how dumb the people are we talk to and that Mark Dice talks to? They don't know what planet they're on, bro.
Yeah, I hear you there. They try to give geography to them one time. You know, where is Missouri? Come on, guys. Where is Kansas? It's the flyover area. Nobody pays any attention.
In the last month or so that Obama had, he will try to start a major war. You don't think that Russian passenger jet marked military flying with 90-plus members of the choir blew up over Sochi by itself, do you? They've given surface-to-air missiles, including Stingers. Not just the other systems that only go 2 miles, but the actual Stingers that go 5 miles. They've given them to them, and they shot down earlier this year the Russian aircraft over Egypt. This is the third Russian aircraft they've shot down the last few years as punishment for being in Syria. And they killed the Russian ambassador as punishment and 2 other diplomats. And now the head banker for NATO just got found dead behind a building in the middle of nowhere, shot by somebody else's gun. So the hot war is kicking off. The Russians are trying to say this stuff isn't terrorism because they don't want to have to respond. They're hoping Trump gets in. And now Israel has been told that, well, the U.S. abstains, so the UN universally votes to say that they've got to recognize the Palestinian state, basically, and have no right to settlements. And the word is John Kerry is preparing another UN resolution that would officially recognize the Palestinian state. When the Palestinian state officially says they believe Israel has no right to exist and will, quote, drive them into the sea. Now, let's say I don't like Israel, which I don't dislike Israel. I also don't fawn after it because it's got some big leftist elements to it that are involved in our domestic operations. I don't like that. But let's just say I was against Israel. Would I still want them to be attacked? And to have the Arabs attacked? They have nuclear weapons, 400 to 600, it's estimated, of high-tech use. that means nuclear war. Just like I'm not a Russian agent, but let's say I hate Russia. I still would want to have a war with Russia because I don't want to have the end of days take place. Now, Matt Bracken joins us at the start of the next segment. I want to go to a few more of your phone calls right now. And then later, but I'm not going to push it back anymore. At about 45 after, Bracken and I, because I know Bracken covers the subject as well, we'll get into AI being embedded in the home. Now, what I'm telling you, I told you 20 years ago, because MIT and others talked about it. Now, the reason I'm covering it is it's ubiquitous. I have about 50 articles, mainstream news, admitting two things that are key that I'll tell you coming up after we take a few of your calls and then cover geopolitics and what other crises Matt Bracken, former Navy SEAL, best-selling author, highly recommended patriot from my sources inside the intelligence community, to be able to talk about things that are open source info, but are also the classified assessments that have been taking place. And again, the good news is our military and most of the intelligence agencies are awake and know what's happening. They know there's an attempt to bring down our country and cause a civil war. The problem is Obama is so arrogant, so full of himself, so delusional, and so is Hillary. They're going ahead with a plan to start a big fat war and then hand it to Trump. And that's the plan. You've seen them try everything they can. Turn loose the Arab Spring, flood Europe, flood the U.S., open our borders. Now they're moving to the next level. We'll get Matt Bracken and his breakdown on that here in a moment. Chris in Georgia, thanks for holding. You're on the air.
Yes, hello, Ellis. How are you?
Good, my friend.
Yes, before my actual topic, I want to say, how is Trump anti-American if he doesn't want war with Israel? That is what the globalists want, to take power. So the argument the first caller made is plain out bull. But the reason I'm calling is for Pence. You keep saying the elites may kill Trump. Are you saying that on the basis that Pence will follow the globalists before the American people? Because Trump would only be killed if Pence would do something Trump wouldn't. For an example, Israel and the TPP. So why do you say they would kill him?
Well, they wouldn't have mainstream media promoting it in every major newspaper and magazine that I've seen. I mean, hundreds of them saying kill Trump and then doing nothing about the writers and Hollywood producers calling for that if they weren't trying to foment violence. It came out in the WikiLeaks. They're trying to foment violence at his rallies and hoping somebody would kill him. I don't think Pence is a bad guy, but he's more of a mainline kind of Christian conservative who is more globalist than Trump. I don't think it was a bad choice, but I do actually have concerns. I don't think Pence would be in on that. But I think the whole thing claiming that Trump is a Russian agent is an attempt to create an atmosphere where you could get rogue elements, leftists in the government to try to kill him. I mean, I think that's something I'm really concerned about. I appreciate your call, Chris. Let's bring Matt Bracken in now to kind of co-host for this segment, taking calls with us, to get his take on what the caller just raised. Matt Bracken?
Yeah, it's going to be definitely an interesting short period of time here. I don't think that there's necessarily a conspiracy. I don't think that there's like a secret room in the EU in Brussels where they talk about how they're going to do this. It's more like a common jellyfish brain. That's where they're all tending to go.
Sure, it's an atmosphere.
You can give truth serum to Ben Rhodes and his brother, the president of CBS, and they'll both swear that they're not in cahoots to start this war with over Israel. But they all the jellyfish are swimming hard in that direction. That's how I would look at it.
Sure, and I mean, even if folks have some issues with Israel, let's just throw that out there and say, sure, Israel has some things that aren't perfect. It's different political parties. It's like any nation. The obsession with it, the mental illness, and now trying to start a war. Don't people get that Israel has nukes?
Yeah, Israel has nukes, and they have what they call the Samson option, which is, if before they get pushed into the sea, they're going to take out every Arab capital, plus Pakistan, et cetera. So and unfortunately, though, they did surveys in places like Pakistan that said, if we could nuke Israel, wipe them out, kill all the Jews, but 100 million Arabs would die, that overwhelmingly is supported. It would be worth it, even if our capitals were nuked. If it's the end of the Jews, that's the extent of the hate on that's been built inside of the Arab mind, the Muslim mind for Jews, the extreme hate on, to where they'll even send their 7, 8-year-old daughters out as suicide bombers. This comes from an incredible hate. Tying it back to the left in the United States, you see the professor with the, all I want for Christmas is white genocide. You see a course out in Wisconsin at a major university that's,
the problem with whiteness.
With whites.
Yeah.
Yeah, the problem with whiteness. This is what you do before the Hutus and the Tutsis go at it. This is what you do before the Serbs and the Kosovo Albanians go at it. You whip up this hate on.
And by the way, let me just stop you because this is so key. In the WikiLeaks are literally hundreds of emails saying our culture control isn't working. We need to go to demographic warfare. That's the top Democrats saying demographic warfare means race war, and they're out there priming it to an insane level. This is just crazy.
Then when you just see the lack of social control, when you see what's happened at the malls, and you think this was for fun, it was organized mainly on social media, you know, something cool is going to happen at such and such a time and place. But imagine people with so little control that they'll go to a place where they think there will be fights, looking for excitement. Imagine if the power is out, the water has not run in a week, the food is completely out of the apartment, then what? I mean, look at the lack of social control today on full stomachs with electricity working. Imagine in the dark. So today, I think the next form of warfare, I'm not nearly as worried about ICBMs streaking across the polar ice caps. I mean, that can't be ruled out. But I'm much more worried about cyber attacks that don't come with a return address, that just target our biggest Achilles heel, which is our cities being
and Matt, if you look at the Soros, sure, if you look at the Soros attack plan, they could launch the false flag to destabilize us. They're the ones that want to destabilize us. They're the ones trying to hand Trump a destabilized Middle East. They admit that. Why do you think Obama's doing this right at the end? It's not just about his legacy. This is about handing Trump a crisis.
Yeah, not only that, it's about holding on to it. It's analogous to the Billy Bush tape. You know, the network had it a year ago. They waited. It was like having the, the ace up the sleeve at the poker game back in Tombstone. They waited, and then they dropped the ace at the perfect time with the Billy Bush tape. They thought it still didn't work. Well, this is Obama maximizing his leverage, doing this at a time when it's, just obviously a backstab to the incoming Republicans and to Israel. Like you said, it's a hand grenade with the pin out being tossed to you, a hot potato. But it's crosses a lot. You talk about red lines. This crosses every Israeli's red line. They're now saying, forget about the West Bank, forget about the settlements, put that aside. They're saying East Jerusalem is occupied, we're trying to get a resolution. It's passed. East Jerusalem is occupied territory. That means the holiest sites in Judaism and Christianity should be under Muslim administration. And anything short of that will be, that will result in boycotts of Israeli products.
This is spectacular arrogance, and the majority religion within the religion of Islam, 80%, is Sunni Wahhabist garbage. They have said they want to blow up the holy sites in Jerusalem.
Sure, and remember also, this shows the preeminence of Islamic supremacism. This is supposedly their third holiest site after Mecca and Medina. Muhammad never visited. They kind of airbrushed and wrote in a hallucinogenic horse ride to Jerusalem in a dream by Muhammad some point after his death, or while he was taking a nap in the cave or somewhere. So they wanted to draw this powerful, important, critical, geographically and otherwise, city into the Islamic orbit. So they just declared that it's their third
and let's expand.
City. Why don't we just declare that Mecca is the second holiest Christian city? I mean, it makes as much sense. But to have the threat of Muslim control, and that's backed by the UN, is huge. This means that Trump...
Sure, that's why we got you on. We've got to go to break. But, I mean, listen, the Islamists now blow up their own holy sites if they're Shiite. So there's a lot of Islamists that want to blow up the Christian shrines that are in Jerusalem. They want those removed, is my point. And I could see Obama there in the future speaking Arabic with a plunger blowing up, the Mount of Olives or something. We'll be right back.
We have a special program today because in a few moments we are joined by a legendary American journalist, Alex Jones. But before that, let's see this short piece about our today's special guest, Alex Jones. Mainstream media, the fourth estate, is molding us today. We form our worldview, our perception of reality, depending on how the mainstream media presents the information to us. In the Western world, the dictatorship of the liberal paradigm is all too obvious when it comes to the media, but it's become especially brazen during the US presidential race. All the big media moguls openly supported the war criminal Hillary Clinton. Round the clock, with the help of lies, distortions, and fake polls, they praised her political platform and assured of her inevitable win. Meanwhile, all the front pages of every other publication portray Trump as a loser, intentionally exaggerating his supposed dark past. His words taken out of context and repeated over and over on all media outlets. On November 8th, the main Western media operations had already prepared their November 9 issue with Hillary's portrait on the cover and headline, Madam President. And television programs have prepared reports praising the lady kingpin of the world financial elites. But something went wrong, and all the pre-scripted news packages turned a complete fiasco. They've put everything on the line and failed miserably. The predetermined Clinton win has suffered a death blow. The numbers spoke for themselves. Trump won. No one in the US mainstream media believed or wanted to believe in Trump. No one except for those in the scientific polls, Los Angeles Times, and one dynamic, highly passionate, energetic, and unrelenting journalist and documentary producer, Alex Jones, the director and editor-in-chief of InfoWars News. It is this journalist who had the courage to show the truth of what is really going on in the United States. For many years, he has been fighting the false narratives of the mainstream media information. He has exposed the globalist liberal ideology prevailing in a totalitarian style on the modern Western media front. He reported on the financial elites, their stakes and strategies during the election. Alex Jones believes that behind all the world's media outlets, there's an ideological liberal agenda which aims at building a unipolar empire. This world government manipulates all the prominent media systems for the sake of their own personal interests. He was all but ostracized for continually exposing the war crimes of Hillary Clinton. They avoided mentioning his name, and his website suffered repeated denial of service attacks. But they couldn't stop him. His videos continue to gather hundreds of thousands of views. Infowars.com was practically the only resource where the elections were covered thoroughly and objectively. They didn't cut their live feeds when someone voiced criticism towards the FBI, and they discussed the WikiLeaks stumps. Infowars has built itself to serve the interests of the American people. This media organization showed its independence from the world financial elites. It showed its sovereignty from the globalist owners. And today, when all the mainstream liberal media have utterly been discredited, revealing themselves as puppets, Infowars, along with the new independent media outlets, are becoming powerful forces in the new era and new paradigm which ushered Donald Trump.
In the fourth hour, David Knight comes in, along with Owen Schroyer and others, with a lot of breaking news and analysis. Then we have the nightly news returning this evening, 7 o'clock Central. Normally, we have a Christmas tree physically in the studio, but this year I thought with our big video wall, why not shoot some HD video and then add snowflakes to it of the Christmas tree in front of the Texas Capitol. We did just that. And we actually got some emails and comments saying, I'm offended by your Christmas tree. Well, don't watch or listen to the show. If you've been taught to hate our culture, what's left of it? So I thought we're just going to bring it back since people don't like it. That's the level of bullying we see with the anti-Trump people in the streets, the daughter of Trump being attacked on a plane. This is their attitude. All the folks that are getting arrested now in Florida trying to go kill Trump. This is getting really, really serious. And so I wanted to have Matt Bracken on to co-host with me in this hour and take your phone calls, because what does it signify? Crossing red lines to, on Hanukkah, hold on to this thing that Obama had been developing for years, as Bracken said, and then put it out on the most important Jewish holiday. That's undoubtedly the biggest Jewish holiday, hands down. Comes at the same time as Christmas, but lasts for over a week. And to do this, to stir things up with all this racial and religious and ethnic and cultural division. And then on top of it, sign a bill that says the Board of Governors of the FCC will now be over all media, not just broadcast, but cable TV, print, internet, naming InfoWars in the committee hearings, and that they will decide what can be on the air and not, and basically take Cass Sunstein's plan from 8 years ago and start censoring. I mean, it actually says it, fining us, suing us, blocking us. So Obama is doing all this at the end as if he's not leaving or something, or as if he doesn't think Trump's going to be able to reverse it. And then other people say, and this is my question for Matt Bracken, well, can Trump just appoint a bunch of czars and with executive orders reverse this? Well, Obama's doing it by executive orders, but also by law. And what does it say? That the Republican House and Senate went along with this free speech killing legislation that they call, listen to this, that they call Countering Information Warfare Act. But then it goes on to talk about how the Department of State, with the Secretary of Defense, the Director of National Intelligence, that's all the agencies, and the Broadcast Board of Governors of the FCC to establish a Center for Information Analysis and Response, which will pinpoint sources of disinformation, analyze data, and in true dystopic matter, that's from the bill, now I'm reading off, develop and disseminate fact-based narratives to counter effrontery propaganda. This is a short segment, long coming up. Matt Bracken, what do you make of all this red line crossing? Doesn't this signify they're getting ready to exponentially do something more? Because this is already a 10 on a 10 on the Richter scale.
Well, when I read about the FCC stuff, I think, thank God that Trump was elected. It's like sinking a U-boat when it had 15 torpedoes left. If we hadn't sunk that U-boat, those 15 torpedoes would have done a lot of damage. Now, things like the FCC regulations, I think that they can be put aside by Trump if he wants to. They have.
But don't you agree we should be hearing that then?
I'm not sure what Trump's priorities are right now in terms of dealing with, the bigger issues like Jerusalem and, the UN thing. I mean, the next big moves, next macro moves on the chessboard are pretty easy to suss out. This is a very brilliant move by the enemy, including our president, Obama. It's a very brilliant move because you've already got the Russians, the Chinese, and the Iranian blocs hostile or against us, even though we might work here.
So they've already got the Middle East turned up to explode. Now they're going to enter.
Now you've just split the West. Now it's going to be America plus Israel, Trump and Netanyahu, versus countries like Spain and New Zealand. So you've just split the alliance because we're going to have to do counter punishments against Spain for what happened on the Security Council, which should have never happened because this was an Obama move. This was an Obama moving the chess piece play. It had nothing to do with.
And don't you agree it's a very aggressive, violent move?
It's a very aggressive, violent move. It's an existential threat to Israel to say that as of the time that resolution passed, East Jerusalem, which is the Wailing Wall, the original King temples, where Christian sites like cavalry, all of that's going to be under Muslim control. That's an existential threat. And by doing this, he split the West, putting countries like Spain and New Zealand.
I agree. Stay there then. We come back. Before we go to calls, I'm going to give you the floor for like 5 minutes. Matt Bracken, what does that signify the next move will be? As you just said, split the West, plunge the Middle East from being in total chaos into war, tie that into the Russian planes getting shot down, the ambassadors. This looks like the build-up to World War I. It just came out a few months ago, and even the Jerusalem papers picked it up, where George Soros was plotting in WikiLeaks a way to overthrow Israel. There it is. George Soros criticized by pro-Israel groups as conspiracy theorists seize on Open Society Foundation leak. I love how, what newspaper is that? The London Independent makes a joke, calls it conspiracy theorist when it's in his Open Foundation saying the plan is to overthrow Israel and make it a UN state. With the Pope, who now says open Europe up to Islam. I mean, you see where all this is going. And I'm not against the Catholics, folks. I got a lot of friends that are Catholic. This new Pope is not a Catholic by any real Catholics stretch the imagination. But you can see the geopolitical systems. You can pull up the WikiLeaks. Just Google George Soros, WikiLeaks, Israel. And you can read where they're talking about how they're going to censor our media, how they're going to end our free press, how they're going to overthrow Israel. And it's just crazy. So I wanted Matt Bracken, before we go to some more phone calls, people like Chris and Dustin who are patiently holding, and get into where this is going, because I don't see how George Soros, who seems to be in charge of most of this, has that much energy at almost 90 And now every time I turn around, he's behind it. Gun control, open borders, anti-Christian stuff. He's a weirdo, Nazi collaborator. He's got Hollywood and the left behind him. A lot of leftist Jews are behind him. And it's just crazy to know that they're actually moving forward with this, starting wars with Russia. I don't want that, so I'm called a Russian agent. I don't want war with Israel. I'm not an Israeli agent, never been to Israel. I'd like to go there sometime. It's very historic. But it's just the level of insanity. What do they think they're going to get out of this? I guess order out of chaos. So your take on that, Matt Brackett, and then what comes next as all these red lines are passed? What if Kerry does come out with this resolution that reportedly Netanyahu's worried about? It's up on Infowars.com, that completely recognizes Palestine. Well, Palestine says they don't recognize Israel. What does that then trigger?
Well, this is going to be a huge crisis. And what's going to happen next is, well, to back up is just a half step. But we have to understand that what's being broadcast in the entire Muslim world right now, especially, of course, to the Palestinians, is that the UN, the legal sanctioned body of the world government, remember, UN is not even a country, so that to them the UN is the big Megillah, has declared that the Israeli occupation of the West Bank and East Jerusalem are crimes, that Israel is an outlaw state. So what we're going to see at the city level and inside of Israel is a massive intifada, where they're going to, for example, start assaulting Jews anywhere near the Dome of the Rock, throwing rocks down at them, all of that, daring them to do anything about it. Then they're going to progress into an intifada stage, throwing rocks at the police in East Jerusalem, saying, get out, you're occupiers.
And this will then be taken as a green light for bigger attacks in Europe and the United States.
Well, the next thing that happens, though, is that it's going to put the UN versus Trump and Netanyahu, Israel and the U.S. So it's very likely. I mean, even Krauthammer last night said they should turn the UN building into a new Trump Tower and sell condos. You know, they're thinking about either withholding funds, which would be a first step, the 22%, the couple billion a year we pay to the UN, withhold their 22%, and maybe even ask them to close the building in New York at some point. But this will be the whole world, the globalists, versus what they will portray as the rogue outlaw United States and Israel. So you've already got like Spain, countries like Spain and New Zealand, you would think would be safely on our side, are going to find themselves on another side of this divide. It's going to be the U.S. plus Israel versus the world, with Trump saying, I'm leaving the UN. And without the UN, without the United States, it's no more than the League of Nations. And we know what happened. The League of Nations was, you know, a precursor to World War II. So, but as far as how the war will unfold, I'm not as worried about missiles crossing. There's this new step now in a new form of warfare, which we've seen how it works with Russia versus Ukraine. You know, you can, like watching the Spanish Civil War in the 30s, you can get some ideas about how World War II is going to be fought, you know, with Stukas and Blitzkrieg, things like that. But now looking at Russia and Ukraine, they don't just fire artillery. They gave some guys a missile that they shot down the Air Malaysia, Air Indonesia. But in general, the next step, there's a step short of shooting down enemy planes, which is turning off Kiev's electricity. So we can already see how this will work at a state level.
Sure, we've already seen them blowing up the power plants and blowing up the power lines, and we already see them using jihadists.
But they just did. But last week in Kiev, they turned out Kiev's power just by corrupting their data, so that the engineers were looking at gibberish on their screens. That was a warning shot to the government of Ukraine and Kiev. And we're going to see, instead of, you know, a fail-safe scenario with B-52s and ICBMs, what we're going to see is cities having their electricity go off, and everybody on the other side saying, don't look at me, I don't know what you're talking about. But when the action-reaction is going to be, I think, more going against infrastructure grids, because you can do that without leaving the missile trail through space.
Sure, and then even the stay-behind networks of the globalists could probably stage attacks on our grid and blame it on Russia. They've set the table for that. So geopolitically, Matt Brackett, then we're going to calls, looking at this, is this arrogance by the Soros globalist, by the Rothschilds, Rockefeller Combine, or do they really think putting the world into this crisis, they'll be able to maybe put enough pressure on Trump to direct him? Because it seems to me it's a major further miscalculation. Let me answer the second part.
I think it's desperation. I think it's pure desperation. They didn't think Brexit was going to win. All of their fake polls didn't matter, which are just psyops. All the fake polls, ABC, fake news ABC, saying a week before that Hillary was up by double digits. That was the big lead story in all the media after that ABC poll. Trump is just collapsing. She's up by 12. All the psyops, all the polls, the people are now seeing that these are just psyops. More people
So you're answering the second part of my question. Sure, you're answering the second part of my question, Matt, before I got to it. So let me throw it out there. Is it calculated? Because as earlier you said, it is very, very cunning, but it doesn't work because then it just separates Americanism versus globalism that much more, and then discredits their entire push. So here's the problem, though.
It works. Well, it works. It works as far as if part of their goal is out of order chaos and that they wouldn't mind World War III. In that sense, yes. If it blows up, blowing up is all right to George Soros.
Sure, it only works if you're completely insane.
But yeah, but he's got jets that can cover, and he can land in any continent in 10 hours. He's not worried about himself or people that matter to him. The rest of us are. It's like the Greek gods just looking down and playing with the humans. I
was about to say there's also a phenomenon in history with old powerful men. They either get real sweet and give everything away, or they tend to get more maniacal and start thinking of end of days, death cult stuff. And Soros has talked about this before. He believes he's a messiah, and if he can't have things, people should just die.
And if he can't be victorious, I think that he would rather at least see that his place in history, the virtual Mount Rushmore, will have his face on it, because every history book written in the future, good, bad, or not indifferent, good or bad, George Soros is going to be a chapter. George Soros led to World War III and the death of 100 million, or George Soros led the new global order and was the first George Washington of the world government. Either way, he sees himself on top of history. His days are slipping, even with all the Swiss blood transfusions and the baby fetuses probably being put in his morning Wheaties. It won't last forever. He probably has new organs. He probably has a lot of things, but his body is going to eventually completely fail. And he'll be gone. They can't stick if he could, he would stick his brain into some 25-year-old's body. But he can't do that yet. The next best thing is to burn it all down, take it all down, either completely victorious, first George Washington.
Sure, and that's the psychology. And at this point, George Soros must be stopped. He's done enough. We know he's a criminal. What do you think about the leftists, though? Like you said, all these crazy professors coming out and saying whites are inherently evil, let's kill them when they're white. What do you make of the left in this giant hysterical meltdown, so upset that Donald Trump wants to cut their taxes? I think it shows what a mental patient cult it is.
Yeah, brainwashing works is what I take from it. The North Koreans that are wailing and sobbing when they hear bad news about the last dear leader dying or whatever, they're not faking it. Brainwashing works. You can even brainwash white people to hate their own background, skin color, culture, everything about themselves, and the only way they can expiate their guilt and shame is to somehow do whatever you can, like this white professor calling for white genocide. That's the depth and success of brainwashing. Brainwashing really works, and there's nowhere that brainwashes better than our universities.
That's right. They take young, scared kids, put them into these group forums, and just bully them into submission. And it's truly, truly sickening. I want to take a few phone calls here with Matt Bracken, and then when we do the next segment, we'll get into some of this whole AI thing that's invading the home, and then I'm going to shoot a special report tonight on it. I've really not been procrastinating. It's such a big issue. I haven't gotten to it yet. Dustin in Florida, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yes, Alex. Well, first off, I want to say Happy New Year's to you and the crew.
You too.
Matt Bracken as well. You guys are awesome. Well, never mind the trolls, Alex. The warmongers, obviously, Obama is just George Soros' puppet, like we all know. Let's just hope the AI doesn't take the sociology of George Soros.
That's a good point. For instance, or they put George Soros' brain in the AI computer.
Yeah. Also, when it comes, I'll let you guys talk about the AI in the home. Obviously, that's a huge problem. But, obviously the artificial intelligence for the new cyber war, the space war, the ground war, the nautical war is going to be very key because, again, these are super intelligent, almost conscious, systems that we're all leaking information into, just like you've said before, you know, every single thing we do, from the Facebook to the Twitter to the where you swipe your credit card at, to where the GPS is on your phone, to, you know, just everything.
Sure, and they admit they're building a system to be omnipresent, to predict the future. They admit the AI is supposed to be all-controlling. That's how it becomes artificially intelligent, and it's hooked into billions of us in real time making decisions. So you can argue we're all nodes, and it's already conscious, so they can program it to program us with the way it feeds us information. That's what Google said 17 years ago when they were founded, was their plan. And the argument is it's already AI. I appreciate your call. Let's get Matt Bracken's take on that.
Yeah, I think that maybe you reach a saturation point, and something happens that brings the entire, you know, that crashes the entire system. For sure, the power of computation has allowed us to, you know, run this whole just-in-time economy. The food goes from the field to the supermarket just perfectly. So we've leveraged our populations way beyond the normal carrying capacity in cities like, you know, Los Angeles, San Diego, Phoenix, that only have local water, very little local water.
Time bombs.
So we think that we're, you know, replacing God in a sense. Perfect knowledge. Some huge master brain will have perfect knowledge. It'll be like the movie THX 1138. You know, everybody's at a console just being told when to sleep and when to go to work. But I don't believe that I think that we'll see a huge system failure.
By the way, Bloomberg admits his plan is like THX 1138, where a console tells you everything and, quote, he programs it. I mean, these are megalomaniacs.
And the problem that I see is that millennials, and maybe with each generation older, a little bit less, but I think that children and millennials will absolutely wait all night, like, you know, before Black Friday. They'll wait all night to be the first one to be chipped, if the chip is going to give them, you know, broadband access everywhere. They wouldn't. The whole notion of personal privacy draws a blank stare from them. They could care less.
And what's crazy about this is the phone is already a chip you carry around that tracks, that traces you. You watch these videos of riots and shootings and insanity all over the country, and it's little millennials and kids walking around looking only at their screen, leading them through all of the insanity that the hive mind has brought them to, and you can see the true fall of humanity.
Right, and that's why the reason my new novel is so long in coming, I stopped to write some pretty big short stories like Alas, Brave New Babylon, which I hope people will Google that title and read it, because there's a real bad worst case scenario for a system failure, because we can't feed ourselves. You know, you can fool yourself in a lot of ways. It's easy to fool yourself. Think that through the normalcy bias tells us that, you know, millions of people can live in places like Los Angeles and Phoenix forever. Well, let me tell you, without electricity and water moving, they can't. Just like the Anasazi people in Chaco Canyon, New Mexico, those people, they built big cities, and they outran their ecology, so to speak, and just
That's right. And the globalists admit they're setting up a system where it's artificially going to start imploding. They're going to use that for social engineering and then finally let it completely implode.
They'll never be able to control that. It'll be a runaway. It'll be a runaway chain reaction.
I was about to say, look at hundreds of thousands starving to death in African countries every few months. Hundreds of thousands starving, death, murder. First the zoo animals, then the house animals. Now they're eating people in Venezuela. The media is trying to cover it up. Total insanity.
Any country, forget Venezuela and Africa. That's, you know, being.
No, I agree, but notice how we just don't think about that.
But in a war situation, I'm not worried about the missile over the ice cap. I'm worried about some hackers, you know, could be Russia, but we won't be able to prove it, turning our lights out. Our cities are time bombs. Without electricity, our cities are as vulnerable as if they were living. And I'll say it again,
the Russians have said they don't want to do that. It's the globalists that are the masters of this. They've put everything in. They've got the kill switches. The #1 suspect is the Obama types, that if they can't control it all, they want to burn it down. Obama told Africans, you can't have credit cards, you can't have credit cards, you can't have cars, you can't have air conditioning. They're already telling us. Go ahead, Matt.
But Russia will be the boogeyman, just like with the election. That was another tell. That was another giveaway.
Sure, they're preparing them to be the boogeyman in the future, saying if there's ever a cyber attack, we're going to blame Russia.
The Russians did it, just like they stole the election from poor Hillary. So yeah, no matter who it is, it's almost sure that whatever the fingerprints are on the mission will be false fingerprints.
That's right.
You know,
let's take a call.
They used a Cyrillic keyboard. It wasn't the Russians, you know, for sure. But we won't know. We won't know. We'll be debating years later who killed the power.
It's an incredible time, Matt. Matt Bracken is our guest. Matt Bracken, stay right there. Again, is it better for people to visit your website, enemiesforeignanddomestic.com or the Gates of Vienna?
.com. I just post some of my short stories are posted on Gates of Vienna. You can look for me there. But my short stories are floating around the internet. Also on Western Rifle Shooters Association, which isn't a target practicing club. It's like Western as in civilization.
That's right. And we're going to be right back. We're going to be right back on the other side and take more of your calls in this segment and the next. I promise I'm going to get to Chris and Richard and Mike and Andrew. And I don't do this thing saying I'll get into AI on purpose and then not get to it. It's just that I keep backing things up because there's so much breaking news as we speak. Briefly, these are desperate times. We're sitting here historically, and every major political analyst says this is the type of stuff that started World War I, World War II, all the same parallels. But you're also seeing really positive things happen, and you're finding out who's who. I'm not saying Trump's perfect or Israel's perfect or any of this, but Trump is promoting Americanism and sticking with our allies and what we've always done. You turn the Palestine, as they call it, Israel, over to the Palestinians, they'd be killing each other in 5 seconds. It'd be a new civil war. No one in that region will even take them in because of this. No refugees. We're supposed to take refugees. Obama has accelerated refugees being brought in 80+%. That's on Infowars.com just the last month. And year over year, it's even higher than that. There is a larger plan to bring down the West, and it's very, very sad to see. And it shows the mental illness and really the villainous attitude of the globalist. Let's go to Chris in Indiana. You're on the air. Go ahead, sir.
All right, I have 3 quick points, and it's kind of a little report, some ideas I have to bring up, and then I want to ask a prompt question, an important question about the
okay, go ahead, brother.
Countering.
I know folks are used to being screened. You're live on air.
Thank you so much. Jesus gave his life for me, so I give my life for him. I love everybody, man. I can't stop loving everybody. Everybody's part of this creation, and we are one. I'm experiencing Trump euphoria over here. I started a new business early November. It was super successful. I made a couple $1,000 bucks.
Well, that's fantastic, Chris. Let me ask this in the interest of time. It says restrictions on the press, harder to find the truth. What's your question or comment?
That was what I wanted to get down to. That's the critical one where it comes into everything. All the cookies. Pachinik was right. I mean, all the interviews and what we're all talking about. Pachinik was right on the money every time. I love and Bracken, Matt, it's an honor to have you on with us. The NDAA restrictions, the Countering Information Warfare Act, going to make it a lot more difficult for us to bring about.
Well, but we need to stop it. I appreciate your call. Thank you so much. I'm glad you're excited. We need to stop it from happening. We need to say you can't restrict the free speech. The FCC under the CIA and the Department of State doesn't have any right to do this. This is a Cass Sunstein plan that got rejected 8 years ago. We have to say no to them, not just make preparations for it to come into play. Like, if I see UN helmets, I'm going to start shooting. Let's stop it from ever getting to that point. And again, as Bracken said, it's kind of like their submarines getting blown up. They're firing torpedoes as we speak. Their subs going under. They already launched the torpedoes. Trump needs to take those torpedoes out. So I'll take his analogy and go one further. They got their torpedoes off. Trump has to address this. We have to make a big deal out of it, Matt.
Well, for sure, censorship and control of means of getting new knowledge, that's what it's all about. As we've been talking about since the election, the left can't learn. They're stuck. They're trapped in a lot of their own biases and their own mindset. And so they now think that the key is just get rid of Alex Jones, Rush Limbaugh, Breitbart News, et cetera, go down the list, and get people so that they can only listen to, ABC and NBC, New York Times, Washington Post. I think that ship has sailed. Now, Europe, though, like in a lot of subjects, Europe provides the canary in the coal mine. They don't have a First Amendment. And in Germany, you will get, warned, arrested, lose your job for saying things not nearly
fined. So again, that's what Cass Sunstein called for. I just remembered, I was telling the crew to grab the article. CNN had this headline over the weekend. It's incredible. For his Christmas message, Trump speaks in front of Christmas trees and raises his fist. Yeah, we're under such cult control to even show some Germanic Tannenbaum, shows how ignorant you anti-Christians are. we have to raise our fist and say Merry Christmas in defiance. There it is. Trump, raise fist, wishes all a Merry Christmas. How horrible. Matt Bracken's our guest, and I'm going to leave the studio. David Knight is taking over with several of other reporters with big breaking news. So please stay with us in the fourth hour. We'll also continue with calls, but we're taking a few final calls here. Mike in New Jersey, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Thanks, guys. McCain is fomenting trouble all over the Eastern republics. You've got him in Latvia, Estonia, calling for a permanent NATO force in Estonia. And last time I checked, the United States spends 3.6% of GDP on the military, European Union 1.1%. Now, do you want to touch on censorship of the internet for a second?
Sure.
Okay. I had my internet taken away by Verizon because I was going beyond what you were willing to go. And at times it was like walking through quicksand. Then the day of Masters and Commanders at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I was shut down hard. They came out over a 30-day period, replaced the equipment on the side of the house, at the cabinet out by a lake where a lot of the different wires come in. Then they repaired the switch. And finally, 30 days in, late at night, somebody in the Philippines said, your circuit, I said, which is bigger, switch or circuit? Circuit. Your circuit is coming up not even in our inventory. It's coming up as a
All right, I appreciate your call. We got some seminar callers today. I picked it up in the voice of one guy, and now the second, kind of joking around. The way internet censorship works, he signed the bill. This is going on, is they have big mass filters against everybody. Then they try to call people out individually and fine or fee them. And the Chinese have a model that we're now adopting of an internet profile where you get down votes for criticizing government and big corporations. So it's a social profile score that's like the mark of the beast. Mr. Bracken, closing comments on that.
It's truly, political correctness is polite censorship. It's just censorship without, the shooting and the gulags. But, you're put at threat of losing your job. That's pretty significant. Ask Cheryl Atkinson about people coming out and, doing computer work that she didn't ask for. She wrote a book about it called Stonewalled. And as far as anybody interested in my short pieces, I have links to all of my short pieces, most of them on my website on a links page. I would recommend folks read like Alas, Brave New Babylon. That's the end of a cyber war that I see, where the power goes down. But yeah, as long as we can, we have to push as far as we can against censorship. This is really if we lose this battle, then we have no control at all. But I think that the Trump election did show us that the people are smart enough to work around the psyops. And because of shows like yours and Breitbart and so forth, we do see the mainstream media as psyops now. So it's no longer working. Once you see the man behind the curtain pulling the levers, you never go back to believing in Oz.
That's right.
It's over.
That's right, man.
They're trying to get us to believe in Oz again, but it's too late.
Yeah, no matter how big the new phantasm is, no matter how big the projection, the hologram, we know it's a little guy behind the curtain, and we're all Toto now. This is what it comes down to. Well, listen, have a great New Year coming up. I want to thank you for everything, Matt Bracken, and the listeners. God bless you.
I want to talk about the history of this countering the info war that we're seeing right now, because that's what it was called when it was introduced back in March. But we have a much longer history than that. Understand that when this bill got introduced back in March, it was called Countering the Information Warfare Act of 2016. Then during the summer, they changed the name. They called it Countering Foreign Propaganda and Disinformation Act of 2016. Really, this was set up to counter the info wars, okay? Because as Hillary Clinton had pointed out, it's an info war and we're losing it. Remember that quote that we played so many times here at InfoWars? They know precisely what this is. They are involved in a process of information warfare. And I want to take you back 100 years ago. 1917, the Espionage Act of 1917. So many people on the left are now seeing that they've been used as tools. We see the Democrats who've been heavily connected to the Democrat Party now seeing that they're being jettisoned in favor of the Muslims. That's what the Obama administration is doing. They're burning down a very important, what has been a very important part of their party, because they frankly don't need the Jews anymore. They've got the Muslims. Muslims have a lot of money. and the Muslims have a lot of bodies that Obama is very rapidly bringing into this country. But there's another aspect of this as well, and that's the Hollywood aspect. Think about how solid Hollywood has been behind the Democrat Party. I want to go back 100 years to a case, the United States versus motion picture film, The Spirit of 76. Doesn't that sound like a civil asset forfeiture case? United States versus a vehicle or a Learjet. That's what we see with civil asset forfeiture. This was the U.S. going against a motion picture film, and the film was about the American Revolution, singing the praises of George Washington and others, and that was something that the Woodrow Wilson administration didn't want to have because they wanted to get us involved in World War I on the side of the British. So anything that made the British look bad was going to be hammered. And so we have this case, the espionage case of producer Robert Goldstein. And if you go back and look at this is one of the earliest prosecutions for the Espionage Act of 1917. And remember that it was Barack Obama who has prosecuted, I should say persecuted, but he has prosecuted and persecuted more journalists, more whistleblowers under the Espionage Act of 1917 than all the previous presidents of the last 100 years combined. Think about where this is going as we look at this move against free press. Understand, and this is the facts of the case. Let me just lay this out for you because this is very important for you to understand where these people are. And I'm talking to you, people in Hollywood. All of you who think that the Democrats are your friend, who think that the fake news thing is something that, that is a response to this election. It has a very long history. This was a film that was created, and it premiered in Chicago in May of 1917. And when it premiered, they went in and they got the head of Chicago's police censorship board. So they started out with brute force censorship, right in your face. And they confiscated this and said, no, it portrays the British in a negative light, and we don't want that because we want to go to war. And the American people already don't want war. So we're trying to sell this war to them, so we're going to stop this information that you've got coming out here. Then they confiscated the film. The film resurfaced in L.A. with the deleted scenes that they objected to inserted back in. So then they began a criminal prosecution against a guy who, interestingly enough, was called Goldstein. Goldstein, like in 1984. Remember? It was Goldstein who got his 2 minutes of hate. Now, I'm sure that that was a reference really to Trotsky, the internal fights within the Communist Party that Orwell was referring to. But I think it's kind of interesting that he used that name. Perhaps it's a coincidence, perhaps not. What they wound up doing was convicting him for aiding and abetting the German enemy because he made a movie about the American Revolution that showed the British in a negative light. He was charged in federal court with violating the Espionage Act. They said that the film was seditious on its face. This is where we're headed, folks. Understand, this has not changed. It has accelerated. As I pointed out, Barack Obama has used this same act more than all the other presidents combined in the last 100 years. So I said it was seditious on his act. They said he tried to incite riots. He was trying to cause insubordination, disloyalty, and mutiny by U.S. soldiers. He was sentenced to 10 years. He received a massive fine. He later had his prison sentence commuted to 3 years by Woodrow Wilson. They also talked about throughout the entire trial saying that he was actually a German spy, not the Russian narrative that we're hearing now, but he was a German spy. It doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. Now, why could they do this, you ask? Well, it was our beloved Supreme Court that said at the time that motion pictures did not deserve First Amendment protection. And that was not reversed until 1952. So all of you people who are saying that the Supreme Court, whatever their opinion is at the moment, is law, that's not true. And you should look at this case very carefully and understand how they can say at one point in time that you have free speech in one area, like motion pictures. Hollywood, are you listening? And then at a later date, they can say you don't have it or whatever. They can change at will because these are 9 politically appointed judges who should not be standing over our Constitution. They gave that power to themselves in a Supreme Court decision. And, of course, Thomas Jefferson opposed that as well. But then they got more subtle during World War I. Okay, we had Edward Bernays, the father of propaganda, the guy who talked about engineering consent. And they got very subtle about how they were going to do this. They made it a psychological operation. And so the very first psyops of the modern age we had as part of World War I, trying to shape public opinion to get us to support a war. And then after the war, Edward Bernays became the father of modern public relations because propaganda at that point in time had been associated with Goebbels. And many Americans think that it was Goebbels and the Nazis who created propaganda. No, they learned it from Edward Bernays. And then what did he do post-war? Well, what they talked about post-war was things like selling cigarettes to people. And, of course, this is post-World War I we're still talking about. Very powerful, the way that he sold cigarettes to people. Okay, he had publicity campaigns telling women that they need to overcome their resistance to cigarette smoking by understanding, having a demonstration of the 1929 Easter Parade. He had fashionable young women flaunt their torches of freedom. See? And we even saw that with Virginia Slims in my lifetime, telling people, oh, yeah, you've come a long way, baby. You can get cancer as quickly as the men can. Okay, he promoted Lucky Strikes by convincing women that the forest green hue of the cigarette pack was among the most fashionable of colors. I'm reading from a article here by The Conversation, taking a look at the progress of propaganda into public relations, okay? And interestingly enough, as he was selling these cigarettes, telling people that they were soothing to the throat, that they slimming to the waistline, okay, he would, at home, his wife wanted to smoke because she was watching his propaganda. And he would grab the cigarettes out of her hand and break them in half and throw them into the toilet. See, he knew that. But he would do a lot of other things, okay? He would tell people to sell Dixie cups. He would create a propaganda campaign. I'm sorry, public relations, okay, that's what he calls it. He would create a propaganda campaign to tell people, hey, regular glasses and cups in your home aren't sanitary. You need to use Dixie cups because that's disposable cups are the only things that are sanitary. So this is the way they manipulated public opinion. Now let's fast forward to the 1970s when we found out that our government, the NSA, the CIA, were spying on Americans, just as we learned yet again with the Snowden revelations. We had the Frank Church hearings. We had the Pike hearings in the House. And they took a close look at that and said, hey, we need to make sure that isn't going to happen. And they said, oh, don't worry. We're only going to do it to foreign governments. It's going to be the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. And that's going to constrain the CIA and the NSA. Yeah, right. So what did they do? They used the FISA Act to create dragnet surveillance of everyone. That's precisely what they did. They used it as a rubber stamp, the very thing that was supposed to prohibit them from dragnet surveillance of American citizens. They used to rubber stamp their search warrants for Mr. and Mrs. Verizon, as Rand Paul talks about it. You have one FISA judge, as they say, in the so-called FISA court. There's no argument back and forth. We're not allowed to know what the FISA court has decided, and yet they say that that FISA court, just like the Supreme Court, can amend our constitutional rights. They can get a search warrant against everyone. And now we're seeing this with Facebook and other issues because they passed another act, the CISA Act, that takes away the ability of citizens to sue these organizations like Facebook and Google who turn over this information to the federal government. That's what they wanted to shut down all along. And this was reported, interestingly enough, for the first time back in May 2012, that congressmen were seeking to lift a propaganda ban. After World War II, with the Cold War, they created the Voice of America and Radio Free Europe, and they said, but with the Smith-Mundt Act, we are going to make sure that they don't broadcast in America because we don't want the American government propagandizing American citizens. Well, that was being repealed in May of 2012. One of the first people to tell us about it was Michael Hastings. Remember the guy that was being pursued by the FBI? He told his friends and the government, various intelligence agencies, and then he wound up dying in a very suspicious car explosion that I believe was an assassination. We called that from the very beginning. I still stand by that assessment. I believe he was murdered by the American government. This is a guy who told us back in 2012 an amendment that would legalize the use of propaganda on American audiences is being inserted into the latest defense authorization bill. Hey, things haven't changed very much, have they? We now see that this has happened as of this last Friday. And of course, it was at the beginning of the month, Thursday, I think it was December the 8th, that we had Hillary Clinton, interestingly, come out and say that we had reached an epidemic of fake news. And then they inserted this bill that it had bipartisan support, was put out there by Portman this summer, that was originally titled Countering the Information War. Okay. They put this into the NDAA the very next day, that Friday, passed it through Congress with heavy Republican support, I will add. Because it's not just Obama that is taking away your freedom. It is also the Republicans. And we need to understand as we look at this, as this is going to play out, this has been envisioned as a partnership with the State Department, the very institute that Hillary Clinton was running. It's going to be a partnership between the State Department and the Pentagon. We're going to be talking again about this movement to censor the truth. And as we look at how this is progressing, I had a very interesting thing that I got in the mail sent today. And it was from a listener who sent a note to us along with a check and said, "Thank you so much and the entire staff for all of your hard work. I'm enclosing not only a donation," they just sent a check to us, not only a donation, but also magazines from The Nation, the Sierra Club, and the Southern Poverty Law Center. And here's the magazine that they sent here, Southern Poverty Report, and their donation card from the Southern Poverty Law Center, saying that they want you to sign a petition calling on President-elect Trump to repudiate bigotry and hate. Because that's the way. Will you repudiate the Ku Klux Klan yet again? No matter how many times he does it, and he never endorsed them, they simply try to pretend that he did, Morris Dees. And of course, interestingly enough, it was Morris Dees who defended the Klan. That was his only involvement in the civil rights movement, was to defend the Ku Klux Klan. And then he dropped out and got back in when it was all finished in the late 1970s because he got a massive mailing list working as a PR guy. We were just talking about public relations. That's how he got back in and got in, switched sides then, went from the Ku Klux Klan to the Democrats and became the Southern Poverty Law Center. But I think it's interesting, and the reason I mentioned this was because we're having an effect. Here's someone who was on the far left, listening to this false narrative that the Southern Poverty Law Center puts out there about racism, and listening to the Sierra Club, to The Nation, and saying, I can't even read these places anymore now that you've woken me up. And so we really appreciate that. And the person who sent that's for you. I'm not going to say who it was, but we appreciate that support. What we try to do here is to offer you products, and that's why we have set up the InfoWars Live store. We need the support to maintain our independence, but we also want to offer you something. We don't solicit direct donations. We accept direct donations, and we're grateful for that when it happens. But we want to offer you products that will help you to survive, help you and your family to improve your health, to improve your survivability, your preparedness. And so that's what we're offering here. And I think it's interesting as we looked over the last few days, the articles that were breaking about how the left is now prepping and the right is saying, hey, we're fine. Everything's fine. Donald Trump is there. You know what? In this case, the people on the left are acting a bit more wisely than the people on the right, because you don't know, even if Donald Trump does everything perfectly, there could be a natural disaster. There could be an engineered disaster. You need to prepare for your future and not go back to sleep. Don't rest on your laurels. This is a fight that is going to continue. We're going to talk about that in the next segment, what Obama has signaled that he's going to do. I was talking about Woodrow Wilson. You know, Woodrow Wilson, the globalist, was the only president to remain in Washington after leaving. And now Barack Obama is going to be the next one because he's not finished with his globalist agenda. But going back to what we have, of course, we've extended the Christmas super sale. We've extended it through January the 1st. Just like many people continue the Christmas tradition until January the 1st, the New Year, we're extending our 2016 Christmas super sale throughout this week. And everything at InfoWars Life Store is available for free shipping. That is a huge savings. And of course, we've had discounts of 25 to 50% across the board. We've had a lot of products that have sold out, but you can still find a lot of these like Super Mail at 30% off, Brain Force at 33% off, Secret 12. All these are discounted heavily in addition to free shipping. And so take a look at what we have. We've already sold out of colloidal silver and fluoride-free toothpaste, DNA Force, Child Ease, Biome Defense 50 probiotic, but we still have a lot of items that are available at discounts of 25 to 50% off. And again, everything is free shipping through January the 1st. Now, in the short period of time that we got left in this break, and we're going to talk about this more in the next segment with Owen and Ashley, but let's not forget that it was 5-6 years ago that everybody was talking about Cass Sunstein. And remember what we were saying about Cass Sunstein? This was the regulation czar in the Obama administration. And he was pushing this idea of nudging. He wrote a book called Nudge, Why We Nudge, saying, hey, we can manipulate people's opinions and do it in a way that is good for them and good for society. That is precisely now what we see at Facebook. It is Cass Sunstein's page. You know, Why We Nudge, our nudge in chief. There you go, right there. New York Times and these others. Why We Nudge. And remember that he also wrote another book called Conspiracy Theories and Other Dangerous Ideas. They say that Cass Sunstein, and this is going back to 2014, he said, this is The Atlantic, saying that he had collected 11 of his most controversial articles on subjects as diverse as conspiracy theories, climate change, same-sex marriage, animal rights, new progressivism, and one volume, Conspiracy Theories and Other Dangerous Ideas. They're continually telling us that we can become safer if we give up our freedom. And that is never going to happen. As I've said many times, to the extent that you give up your freedom, you become a slave to that degree. Slaves are never safe. Slaves are never secure. What they're doing is they're creating a prison around us bit by bit. And today I want to focus a little bit on this move against freedom of speech. And this is something that is being portrayed as a reaction to the election of Donald Trump. And I just talked to you about how this goes back to the early summer, goes back to March. It was a move to counter the information war, they said. Then they changed it to counter foreign influence. And they did that in the summer. And all of this was before all the stuff started about Russia. All of that phoniness. You know, when we talk about hacks, understand that we got a couple of different definitions of hacks. They're talking about it as a verb, as in breaking into a computer. But remember the older version of hack, the noun, that was a writer or a journalist that was producing dull, unoriginal work, like, you know, Hillary Clinton writing your news articles, that type of hack. Well, you know what? What it exposed was that Hillary Clinton and the people who headed the DNC, the people at the New York Times, the people at the Washington Post, they were the hacks. The truth about the election that was exposed, whoever released that information, the truth was that she lost that election because of hacks, because they were hacks, not because necessarily of an action of somebody to break in. But joining me now is Owen and Ashley. And, you know, when we look at this, this is something that people need to understand how long this has been unfolding. As I pointed out, this goes back 100 years. There was some right-in-your-face censorship to try to get people involved in the First World War. That was Woodrow Wilson, the original globalist, okay? And that didn't work as well as the psychological operations that were put in by Edward Bernays, who became a master of propaganda in the advertising business. He was the inspiration for the German Nazis and their propaganda campaigns. And then as we look closer, 5 or 6 years ago, we see Cass Sunstein talking about how they needed to nudge people, how instead of doing outright bans, they were going to do it as a very subtle psychological operation. And that's what we now see in this organization that they're creating that's going to be run by the State Department that is going to push back. It's going to determine what is harmful for us and what isn't. They were talking 5 or 6 years ago how it'd be great for the government to tell us in lunchroom circumstances. This is before Michelle had her lunchroom program. They said, hey, we need to have the government put out the proper choices for people. But when they saw how that worked out. So this is something that is not new. Your comments on how this is shaping up.
Well, it's funny you talk about hacks. It was hacks that lost Hillary the election, hacks like Barack and Michelle Obama, hacks like Bill Clinton, John Podesta, Nancy Pelosi. But as far as them putting us into this prison planet is what we always like to talk about. You know, back with Edward Bernays, what they realized is that psychological operations can be much more effective than actual physical operations because you can get away with these things kind of in the shadows or underground. And a lot of these movements to centralize power or to globalize, you know, the entire planet kind of go unnoticed and untalked about. And that's because of the psychological warfare that we see. So now we're seeing that with InfoWars and other independent media outlets, people are picking up on this. They can't just get away with these psychological operations without being called out on it. So the question now is, will the American public fully embrace the fact that they are under psychological warfare 24/7? And every time we see things like this, pushing for more safety or protection in the wake of giving away our rights, you know, that's, like you're saying, that's heading towards slavery. But the people in America are starting to buck that. And I think it's happening worldwide, too. And so what are we seeing now? They want to censor any independent news. They want to get rid of any voice out there that's calling this to the attention so that way the state is in control of the narrative.
Yeah, it's very interesting when we go back and look at this. And, of course, this is the book from Cass Sunstein. He talked about conspiracy theories, and yet what we have here is a clear stated conspiracy from Cass Sunstein. And of course, he was involved with the Chicago Brain Trust, if you want to call it that, the propaganda organization that Obama came out of. He was given vast control over regulations. That's where he wanted to sit. He set it an organization that was created by the Reagan administration and say, hey, we're going to take a look at the regulations that come out of the EPA and other organizations to make sure that we keep them under control. No, I think the proper way to do that is to make sure that we don't allow the Congress to abdicate its authority to pass laws to these bureaucracies who are self-aggrandizing, who create their own little empires. But nevertheless, that's where he sat. And if we go back and we look at this book now, 6 years later, Why Nudge? The Politics of Libertarian Paternalism. Think about that oxymoron, libertarian paternalism. Those are mutually exclusive concepts. You either make the choices about your own life or you have somebody else say that for your own benefit, I'm going to make this choice for you and I'm going to nudge you. And he says, we're going to use techniques that we've borrowed from the world of psychology, again, Edward Bernays, to help us choose better how to act. And we're going to nudge people in very subtle ways. That's precisely what they're proposing to do with Facebook and Google, pushing information to us, withholding other information from us, doing it behind the scenes, doing it very subtly that they can only do with computer type information like that.
Yeah, you're exactly right, David. Just to piggyback off what you and Owen are saying, basically, you're exactly right. This is an oxymoron. This, what are you calling it? Libertarian paternalism?
That's what Cass Sunstein called it. Yeah, that's his term that he came up with. Yeah.
How about ass?
Well,
Sunstein?
basically, it's a cognitive dissonance term. You know, it's basically taking two completely, crazy different concepts and trying to smash them into one. And like you said, they're basically going at a snail's pace with this, trying to incrementally get you used to this. First it's, one moral thing you're giving up in your values, then it's another thing, and it just keeps building and building and building upon each other. And I think it's kind of like when they use that analogy of a frog, being boiled. It's kind of a slow process, but eventually you realize, hey, this is what's going on. And I think that's kind of what people are realizing right now. They're like, hey, I can't take this anymore. This, political correctness, that's why Trump, I believe, got in, is because people are tired of being nitpicked. They're tired of going on this slow, incremental, descent into basically tyranny. And it starts with the language and what you are, allowed to say and what, you're allowed to comment on and, what's
we look at the language, the fact that they would create some oxymoron like libertarian paternalism.
Right.
That's what the left has always done. They took over the term liberal. Liberal used to mean somebody that believed in liberty, okay, in all aspects of your life. And then they took that over. So then we had to come up with a new term, libertarianism. Okay, now that's being co-opted not only by Cass Sunstein, but by people within the Libertarian Party itself coming out with paternalistic policies. I mean, we've actually seen them abandon their principles in the Libertarian Party. But when we look at this, we have to understand that this is not a conspiracy theory. It is a scientific conspiracy. They talk about engineering. This is Sunstein's approach. This is what he said. He's going to engineer a quote-unquote choice architecture of government-designed environment to frame our decisions. Okay, this is what we've seen from Zbigniew Brzezinski, talking about a technocracy that is going to control us. This is a very scientific, very deliberate, conspiratorial engineering, and we can see that this is rolling out gradually in slow motion. It's amazing to see this thing just gathering speed like a juggernaut and putting out this narrative that this is in response to Trump's election. This is something that's been planned for a very long time. It is engineered choice architecture.
Well, and let's be perfectly clear here. This isn't just something that's been planned for a long time. This has been going on for a long time. This is going on with the EPA. This is going on with the Federal Reserve. This is going on, and we're going to cover this big time tonight on the Nightly News. I can't believe I read this entire thing just about the National Defense Authorization Act this morning for the fiscal year 2017. That's what this is. And what we're seeing is they're taking their mask off. We've been talking about this for a long time. They're finally taking their mask off. They're normalizing the globalization. They're normalizing the federal control or the centralized control. And then what's even stranger is that they're using doublethink or INCSOC to bring it across, whether it's there's no rigged elections, the Russians rigged our elections. When they go low, we go high, yet they cry and whine and bitch and moan and burn buildings down. So it's like this crazy doublethink. And then you talk about with the Cass Sunstein, the libertarian paternalism. It's this weird attack of doublethink, totally confuse the public so that they have no idea what's going on. And then in the midst of all this confusion, all this distraction, bring in the actual arms of the technocracy to do exactly what Cass Sunstein is talking about, except it's not nudging us. They've already nudged us. Now they're putting the nails in the coffin, David.
Yeah, the nudge is simply to say, you're not going to see it coming, okay? It's
right.
Like somebody, coming up behind you and, hitting you so hard in the back it knocks you to the ground, okay? That's their kind of nudge. You just don't see it coming, okay? It isn't going to be in your face like it was with the motion picture director that they did 100 years ago. And that's why the people on the left need to understand this. I look at what's happened in the past, what is going to happen in the future. The people who should be working the hardest to preserve freedom of speech are the people in the motion picture industry, the people in journalism, and yet they, because they're part of the establishment, they think they're going to be okay with this. They're the ones who are working to forward this scientific technocracy that is going to engineer our decisions.
Exactly, David. That's what I find actually most disturbing, is because the press is supposed to be the bastion of liberty. It's supposed to be able to help people, make decisions on their lives. And they're basically lying. We just popped up a Financial Times article, and they said some loss of liberty is a small price. So there you go. He's saying, Cass Sunstein is saying, go ahead and trade your liberty for some fake security in the New World Order, in the global government, global religion. Everything they've said that they're going to do, they've been doing, and they've been building on it and building on it and building on it. And now, like they said, they've taken off the mask. It's really, really, really getting to a point where people have to stand up and say, you know what, we're not going to take this anymore.
Yeah, they have to do this in the background. And this is one of the things when Michael Hastings talked about this. He said, I had some people draw this to my attention back in 2012. This is the first time they started flirting with putting this stuff into the NDAA. And he said, this is a very important thing. And the public needs to be aware of this. We need to have a conversation about, do we really want to do this? Do we really want to throw away our liberty in the vain hope that we're going to become secure, that we're going to be safer? And that is what they're trying to do now, is to put this narrative out there to say that, hey, we just had the Russians just hacked our election, and so this is a response to that. And that's what, if you fall for that phony narrative, you need to go back and look at how long they've been going down this path and all the different steps that have brought us to here to know that that itself is a lie. That is what they're trying to bring us in. Now, here's the thing that really concerns me, and that is the bipartisan support that this has. It isn't something that's going to go away with Barack Obama. This is something that was passed by an overwhelming majority of Republicans. It was sponsored by a Republican congressman. And so this is not a left-right issue. This is not a Democrat-Republican issue. This is a freedom versus slavery issue, and we need to come together on this, and we need to understand how they're trying to steal this from us. I look at the appointments that Donald Trump has made. He's appointed Scott Pruitt as he'd been the Oklahoma Attorney General. He had been fighting the EPA on their abusive regulations, so he brought him in as head of the EPA to fight that kind of abuse. He also brought in Rick Perry, who said he wanted to eliminate the Department of Energy because they were doing a lot of things that were totally unnecessary and counterproductive. And so we see this type of opposition. Same thing with Tom Price to oppose Obamacare. What I'm concerned about, and I don't know, and I hope somebody asks in the confirmation hearings, what's the position of Secretary of State proposed Tillerman to this type of propaganda organization that's going to be run out of the State Department? They are funding it to the tune of $80 million a year. What is his position on that? What is the Secretary of Defense, Mattis? They're supposed to work together. Secretary of Defense and Secretary of State are supposed to work together to propagandize Americans. Do you support that? That should be asked by somebody who is a libertarian. If there are any libertarians left in Congress, they ought to ask them that question, because I'm very concerned about that. I don't know if this is on Donald Trump's radar right now or not. I think he is open to these ideas. I think he listens. He doesn't just take whatever the Washington establishment gives him. He's going to consider what the CIA is telling him, plus what he sees with his own ears. He needs to be very aware of how they are taking this thing to do an end run on the First Amendment, and also to shut down any opposition, including him. So he needs to understand the threat that this poses to a Trump administration, as well as a threat that it poses to the American people. And I hope that Donald Trump hears this discussion. I hope this is something that doesn't just passed quietly in the night.
Well, this was something that also, you talk about bipartisan, I believe it also passed with a 92-7 vote in favor.
Overwhelming.
And you've also got the aspect that this is something that Obama signed on Christmas Eve.
Right.
Christmas Eve? I mean, come on, folks, let's wake up. Why is he signing a bill on Christmas Eve, if not to do it under the cover of night? But I digress. This brings us to an interesting juxtaposition now, David, because with this bill, it even admits, and we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of this, we're going to get into the who's who tonight on the nightly news, but with this bill, it actually requires the president's, you know, he has to cooperate with this. He's one of the major power brokers with this new bill. So my question is Obama going to try to use this bill to power broker in his last month? Is Donald Trump going to be the president when the nuts and bolts are started to screw in to the Republic with this bill? That's the interesting juxtaposition that I'm looking at right now, and we've got a month to figure it out. And, of course, there's the obvious question, do Americans even know that this bill was signed?
Right. Well, that's what we're seeing with the NDAA. I'm sorry, let me just say, they always sneak this stuff in at Christmas time. They always fund the NDAA. That's where they put indefinite detention by the military without trial. And that's where they put all of these other goodies that they pack in there at the very last minute, just like they put in the Federal Reserve 103 years ago. They pack this stuff in during the holidays so the American public is not looking at it, and then we come back afterwards and say, look at what they just did to us. And that needs to stop. They need to change the idea that they can pack all of these things that don't really have it. They try to make it look like it's a defense issue by saying we're going to guard against foreign influence in our government and our elections. And so that's why they put it in the NDA, but we know that that's not what this is about.
Exactly. That's exactly right, David. That's what I was going to say, is that this time of year is actually when the American people have to be most vigilant, because we know Obama just did $6 billion of so-called midnight regulations for the EPA. There's so many different things that he's trying to do, so many different regulations and things that he's trying to push through during the holidays. And this is what they're trying to do, to just go ahead and discredit Donald Trump. And like Owen was saying, the nuts and bolts are definitely going to fall off, you know, once he becomes president, and then it'll be something to blame Trump, you know, on, when it was really the Democrats, you know, and Obama fomenting this, you know, collapse.
And this is over $500 billion that is going to go into the new NDAA bill of unconstitutional activity. And the one thing that they like to do, this is how they get sly about it. You mentioned this earlier, David. Instead of going with the HR Bill 5181, Countering Foreign Propaganda and Disinformation Act, which they had to rename this year, they had to put the foreign propaganda in there so they could push the whole Russian phonyism. But what they did, instead of having that pass, they just went ahead and just inserted that in the NDAA. So that way people paying attention to this don't think, oh, well, it never passed, it never made it to the president. No, yeah, it did. They snuck it into the NDAA bill.
Yeah, what we really need to call that is the Countering InfoWars Act and all of the rest of the alternative media.
David.
Stay with us. When we come back, we're going to talk about this professor who wished for a white genocide. That was his Christmas wish. So we're going to talk about this Drexel University professor who wished for a white genocide and what that tells us about higher education, some other stories as well. But before we do, I want to let you know that we have extended the sale, the Christmas sale that we have at InfoWarsLife.com. We've extended that to January the 1st, and there is free shipping store-wide. Let me repeat that, free shipping store-wide. And we've sold out of a lot of items. We've sold out of DNA Force. We've sold out of Biome Defense probiotics. We've sold out of Calm Child. But we still have, although they're selling out quickly, Secret 12, Survival Shield X2, Lung Cleanse, Living Defense, and we have discounts of 25 to 50% off on these items that we still have in stock. And also, as I point out, free shipping. So before these items sell out, take advantage of the massive discounts we have at InfoWars Life, as well as the free shipping. Also, the sold out is the fluoride-free toothpaste that has silver in it, as well as iodine and Silver Bullet, the colloidal silver product that we have. Those will be coming back in stock. These other items were going to be, that I just mentioned, that Secret 12, Survival Shield X2, Lung Cleanse, those we're going to have to start saving the ones that we have left for those who have signed up for auto ship. That's another thing that you can always do to make sure that you are never out of the products that come through here. That is, you can sign up for that, You'll get a 10% discount and guaranteed that you'll always get it at the interval that you choose. So that's an important thing to remember as well. But right now, free shipping on all products at InfoWars Life. We have extended the sales there. We've got discounts from 25 to 50% and free shipping until January the 1st. Now, Owen and Ashley, when I looked at this article here, this guy who said, all I want for Christmas is white genocide, I thought, he came back and he said, oh, it was just satire. And we could talk about whether or not it was satire, what his real intentions were with that. But I thought, if he was going to be satirical, he could be a little bit funnier about it. He could have said, I'm dreaming of
Oh, you don't think that's funny?
Yeah, well,
joking about
really
genocide? Okay.
But he could say, I'm dreaming of a white genocide, just like all the Democrats I know. Right to the
Make a whole song
exactly. He could do a whole song on that. But I think it's interesting that as he comes out and as he was called on this, he came out and said, well, white genocide is just a fantasy, and I wanted to troll these people.
Fantasy.
What he is doing, in the next tweet that he put out, he said, to clarify, when the whites were massacred during the Haitian Revolution, that was a good thing indeed. So then he points to a real situation of people being targeted for their race and saying, but it's just a fantasy. I think what he's trying to do is foment the kind of racial warfare that we see George Soros and the rest of them doing. And then when he gets called on it, he says, oh, it was simply satire.
Well, I don't think nitwits like this guy really deserve much of our time. This is just another nitwit professor. We see him all over. I witnessed him when I was in college. A bigger story to me is, and this is from Infowars.com, George Washington University has eliminated its United States history requirement for history majors in order to attract more students in our globalizing world. And I think it all ties together. If they eliminate American history, if they eliminate students in higher education knowing about our history, well, then they can do anything. They can demonize white people. They can demonize any race. It doesn't matter because nobody knows the truth. Nobody knows how this country was founded. And it's just amazing to me. I could not graduate from my high school unless I knew every single one of the Bill of Rights by heart. I could not graduate, folks. I could not graduate unless I got an A+ 100% on my Constitution test. I went to CBC High School in St. Louis. I could not be more prouder of that fact. Every school should be doing that with their students.
Well, the amazing thing is that this is roughly 1/3 of the nation's top colleges and universities have removed American history for history majors.
Look, I'm not going to sit here and say, see, I told you so, that communist Chinese-style net censorship was coming to the web, because it's already here. It's being announced. The way you keep the internet open and free is you get involved more than ever. Go to Infowars.com/app. A new battleship in the fight. Infowars Live, available right now. We're looking for a crew to man it. You going to sit down and play games and be a trendy? Or are you going to be part of history? Don't sit by and let the internet and free speech be stolen from you. Take action.